Yeah, well, they do it.
No, I
Girls
know.
do it all the time.
But it went a fried squirrel. I guess Tuesday was your day.
One other time we had a polling place shut down by a snake
I see that too.
transformer.
At least it wasn't alligators.
I haven't seen any flying alligators.
Yeah, there's one got in the big transformer station at my place and blew his little flaming, you know what, across the fence into the timber and set the timber on fire.
Yeah,
Tough.
they will do that.
Good morning.
Rich, it
Morning,
was
Tammy.
interesting.
How you guys doing?
Hanging in there.
On the alligator thing, you know, when the worker went in the water,
Huh?
as soon as he went in the water, his foreman said, "You're off the clock." Because at one point, I guess he was clear up to his neck,
Well, and then if you get bit by that alligator,
Well,
workers comp and.
Take
Oh,
it
yeah.
off.
but he said, as soon as he got in
Okay,
the
it's
water.
time for the meeting. Pledge of allegiance. Okay. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Let's see. Dave, are you reporting in today?
No, sir.
Okay, you're just there.
Julie to be on at some point.
Okay.
She said she wouldn't be here this morning
Okay,
for
all
updates.
right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
it?
public comment?
Yeah, that's what I'm after. Public comment. Any public? Okay, he's going up there, good.
We got a couple items actually, gentlemen, it's okay. First of all, and most importantly, want to introduce Elizabeth Ward in the back. That's going to be Riley County
Morning.
new HR manager.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you.
She's joining us today and tomorrow at least to get acclimated and have Cindy show her the ropes before Cindy departs us, unfortunately, on Tuesday. But we're very excited to have Elizabeth on board and welcome aboard.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Leon Hobson, he's our Public Works Director, so for better or worse, you'll be getting him.
But fortunately, not for very long because he's leaving us too.
Yeah.
But no, we're glad Elizabeth's here with us today.
Okay.
Commissioners
This is the one
wanted
we've been talking about.
to update the public and you gentlemen about the election process, how it's a little different this year due to such a high volume of ballots by mail. The Secretary of State's office has asked us to tabulate those as they come in each day and update our unofficial results. And so that's what we're doing. Of course, the law is they have to be postmarked by Tuesday. And we got several questions. Well, can I bring it in Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? No, because you could have voted it that day and that would extend the election time. So it has to be postmarked by election day, received in our office by Friday, the end of business on Friday. And so just yesterday, I tabulated another 915 ballots, which is a significant amount of ballots. And we expect more today. But you can go out to the Riley County website and pull up, and we'll have the unofficial results listed by date under each one. And so you'll see election night unofficial results is there, and you'll see another one from yesterday that has yesterday's date unofficial results. So just want to educate the public on that a little bit. And of course, all of those, even after the end of Friday, is unofficial because we still have the canvass coming up on the 17th. And on the 17th, we will have provisional ballots that get to be considered as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Anybody else? Okay, well, I guess we'll go to the commissioners. Ron, excuse me. I went to both same time. Ron, go ahead.
We could try it at the same time. I don't know what results we're gonna have with that. Yeah, just a couple of things for me. Monday, I had the opportunity to listen to a separate intergovernmental affairs teleconference. This one dealing specifically with telehealth and rural healthcare access. The president did sign an executive order on Tuesday, so this teleconference was put into place to kind of lay out some of those objectives and initiatives. Had some senior officials from Health and Human Services, Office of Medicaid, Medicare, Department of Agriculture, and some members of the White House communication teams that were discussing those. The one that really jumped out at me, obviously, was rural broadband and wireless. In order to be able to do rural telehealth, obviously, you got to have those things. There is still discussions going on with this quote unquote stimulus package, whatever it ends up being named officially. that there'll be some money that could be distributed out for that purpose. I know the Spark, second round of the Spark funding has 60 million for the state of Kansas. This is kind of something that's just very near and dear to me because I think our economic development and progress and vitality depends on this. I think it's critically important as our roads and bridges. Sorry, Leon. To be able to get new innovation, get new business, get those entrepreneurs and stuff here to this region. Without it, it's going to be very much so a struggle. So I've reached out to several people along the way here, including Senator Moran, who obviously lives here, has a vested interest. I'll re-talk to some of our local and regional USDA people on this. They live in the area too, so everybody has a vested interest. So I would think that that would make this a little bit better and a little bit easier to work through at some point in time. So Tuesday, of course, I did take in election results. For me, I did have several friends and a buddy from high school over in the Salina area who were running for various positions in the Kansas legislature in the primary round. I'm happy to announce here on that all of them won. All of them are moving on to November, so I'm happy for them on that. Not going to put in too much of a plug about anything local at this particular point in time. But I did want to put in a plug to the Riley County Clerk's office and everybody in the office for all their hard work and dedication, not only on Tuesday night, but throughout this process so far. This has been a very difficult and challenging year. And at least on my end, it didn't look like it went off pretty much without a hitch, even with, Tuesday's gas leak, power outages, and random crashes into City Hall. With that, onward to November we go. 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, as been customary, I did listen in on the bi-weekly intergovernmental affairs teleconference. This is, of course, for the All-America response to COVID-19 that they work with local county and tribal leaders with. Really not a lot of anything new really necessarily to report. They too are kind of waiting to see what happens with this stimulus discussion. There is hint that maybe President Trump will do something by executive order as well, so that's part of the equation. This was just kind of an update on what everybody's kind of doing, and that was led by Deborah Bricks, the White House Coronavirus Task Force Coordinator. That's an awfully long title. She talked about a few things. Alex Azar, Department of Human Health and Human Services talked. Seema Verman, Administrator for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And probably the interesting conversation came from John Palalik, the Rear Admiral, who's doing the FEMA Supply Chain and Stabilization Task Force, talking about the ability to develop rapid testing and several other components as we kind of move through this COVID process in the fall. So, and that's all I got.
Ron,
It's been an interesting year, to say the least, in 2020 and stuff. I worked most all day Tuesday and into the evening, watched a little bit of the Royals and missed out on the election there. But Wednesday, I heard for Riley County District 3 that John Mata and I both won. And because Rich mentioned this morning when I came in, I shouldn't come in hopping and skipping. It should be a little more demure, but I served my 8-year sentence almost, up for parole in January. So no, it's been a good run, a good time, but I'm not sure I could have held out another 4 years. And so things always work out the way they're meant to be. I got a call from one of our state senators yesterday and had mentioned probably the end of the LA VTR for sure, and probably the end of the county sales tax, just prediction on my part. But no, I happy the way everything turned out. Well, once again, if I'd been reelected, I'd been here. But I also mentioned this morning that I went back and the last vacation was September of 2013. So with my 7 weeks of vacation coming, right after elections, I'm probably gone. Not really. We got business to do up till the end of the year, but it's fun to think about. But no, I have no regrets, and like I say, it's the voter's choice. And that's the way it should be. And my mother always taught me that things always turn out the way they're meant to be. So now I get my life back. I'm supposed to be retired, and I'm kind of enjoying life a little bit.
Okay. Well, I too watched paid attention to the election and which way it was going, and kind of interesting. And as Rich said, we had a lot of voting, a lot of voters. And he, told me that we still have some voting out, some people, ballots still haven't come in, so wanted to see how close it would be. I did go to a luncheon yesterday with the Military Relations Board, introduced the new Brigadier General O'Connor as the new commanding general for Fort Riley. Very interesting. And I forget the guy's name he's the new garrison commander. Never been to Fort Riley, so he's gonna be interesting on that, so.
Sims?
Huh?
Is that Sims?
No,
Okay.
it's a name about that long. And so, so anyway, saw a lot of people there that I hadn't seen in a while, and it was very interesting. So continue to watch the emails and the phone calls. That's about what I did.
Glad they were able to do that in person.
Yeah, it was good.
Got an interpersonal relationship there to start out with is key.
Okay, business meeting.
First item, gentlemen, have 2019 management representation letter.
Move to sign the 2019 management representation letter with St. Gordon Associates.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All three, please.
We just use the microwave here.
Very thoughtful.
Or maybe we can incorporate it out here on the
Oh, yeah.
desk over here. I was thinking about that after you mentioned that earlier.
And a refrigerator and recliner.
I'm gonna put the recliner in my office.
And the alarm goes with it.
I don't want that thing on. Keep that.
Ooh, let's not use the whole thing now.
There you go.
Ready for the minutes when the board is?
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Tell me when.
Okay.
Page
Yeah.
1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8.
Move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the agenda's look okay, gentlemen?
Oh, I forgot to check. On Monday, Did we schedule our next county official luncheon in September? As I recall.
I thought we were gonna do it in October, I thought it was.
October.
Yeah,
Yeah, Clancy, did you have any items for the county officials luncheon? Yeah, so take it off. Nothing on
Okay.
it. Clancy generally checks to see if there's any topics,
Okay,
Oh, okay.
and then we cancel them if there's not. How's any items for the press conference next week, gentlemen?
you don't have any?
I don't have anything either.
Next gentleman, we have David Willis at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Anybody catch the various angles and videos of that explosion in Beirut?
Hundreds of times, because like I said, I used to teach demolition in a garden and everything, and so I've been fascinated by explosions, but, yeah, it's, reminds me of back when the Moss brothers, set fire to, Manhattan Milling Company in the long building that ended under the viaduct. That end under the viaduct was the section that had all the ammonium nitrate.
Mhm.
Luckily, they got the fire out before, but that was a big concern because it would have taken the viaduct out.
Oh, yeah.
Surgery, but,
Yeah,
yeah, I used to, like the water lines and stuff, you know, you use a little dab of dynamite to set off the ammonium nitrate stuff. Fascinating how fertilizer. Yeah, it's just, I mean.
It wasn't so much the explosion, it was the concussion from the explosion. Oh, holy cow. I mean, that went 8, 9, I don't know, I'm gonna say like 12 blocks at least.
Nice to meet you.
It's all, I mean, you know, that's built in other countries.
Yeah.
And not that big country, but. And then the amount it set off on a magnetometer, I mean, that's just.
Yes,
Just
yeah, I
can't
actually
fathom
have
it.
vacation.
Yeah.
No, but I
Yeah,
wanted
set off
to-
pretty good size one.
So
Seen pictures of the crater from it, it's just massive.
No, and the poor people caught unaware of the wildfire, and they're trying to glass window or whatever, all sitting and blows you down before. And
Yeah, well, I seen the guy in the car that was driving and trying to get away from it on the bridge, and you just see the shockwave roll through him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not just shatter the windows, I mean, just blow them completely out.
Like I said.
probably a bunch of that ammonium nitrate and all that kind of stuff that they had in that place.
Yeah.
Blew it.
Uh-huh.
I'm surprised. I didn't expect that big of a return.
And then on the other thing today, all he had to do was another patch.
Yeah, right.
By far, we won't get all of them.
Education, private
Yeah,
sector,
so
I worked
we'll
for
see
years
today and
in
tomorrow,
Hawaii.
it'll be slower today and tomorrow.
And
Because all of them that we
education,
got
which has
yesterday were
more
marked
similarities, I would say, to
option
this.
A. So they'll just got there really quickly,
But as
so.
far as HR goes,
It is
these
nice
are
to come from
awesome.
Kansas City or something. You're all.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Royals,
No, we don't
boy,
present it like
it is
this,
nice.
you know,
That's a hot pile of mess.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in anything. So I like watching, I have my own conclusions, but I'd say the year after year after year after year, what they say last night, the Royals, each batter tried to hit the home run.
Over just to help us out, you know. that-
All you gotta do is get a hit. And pretty soon,
Really good for
you know, if you just keep getting hits, you're gonna
So we'll
score.
see.
Well, that's how they kind of won at 14 and 15. Here, you get a base runner on with nobody out.
Yeah.
They've had, I think, 6 opportunities this year I've seen so far where they've had the bases loaded with less than 2 out and could not score a, just a single run.
All you gotta do is ding it and drop it between the infield and outfield out there, you know, and then, I mean, if you take a nice level swing, sometimes you still get a home run.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
a
usually
I mean-
actually a little feisty. So
But no,
Hoffman Stadium isn't a hitter's park. I mean, it's not a home run park. It was never designed.
2 minutes, it's usually 30 seconds left.
It's frustrating,
Leon calls.
because I like to watch them and you like to see them win once in a while.
The day just started.
Yeah,
When we give each other a hard time, that's when you know we get along really well.
Yes, I agree. I'm like, I'm looking forward to it. He said, see? Hi.
Welcome you aboard.
Yes.
I will be in to see you in January, and I'm counting on Cindy to go through my papers, I'll let you
Yeah, we'll go through it.
advise me. and-
Yeah, yeah, you sound excited, so.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be, but it was wearing on the last
Yeah.
3 months, especially that just COVID.
Yes.
Right now,
Changes everything. It changes everything.
About having a little fun, so.
Yeah, good. No, I know. Sometimes, that door opens that you didn't know it was there.
Oh, absolutely, and then, of course, my turn to come in here and set the budget.
Oh, gosh. I look forward to that too.
No, there's a rule about that. Once you're done being a commissioner, you can't come back.
Oh, no. I gotta make
Yeah.
John a truthful person that somebody actually shows up at budget.
That actually would be nice. That one I'll pull.
I think it would be, and I might even bring somebody with me.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Can you bring some homemade cookies too?
Huh?
Can you bring some homemade cookies too?
It does make that process a little easier too, yes.
Yes.
It's transferred. We can use those to the city. It's 20, 30, I think it's 85, 20.
So you got that through there.
I got it, yeah. So anyway, we'll have those. That's what. Just to wait until I'm gone, so I don't have.
My wife gets it.
I saw a picture about that big explosion this morning that I hadn't seen yesterday. It was a lady in her wedding dress. Did you see that picture?
Yeah.
That was really pretty, in that dress, and they're showing it right the time that it hit, and the veil goes. Hope she wasn't hurt. I didn't hear if she was hurt.
There were several from that wedding party that were injured, but not anybody seriously or fatal, so.
Gotcha, I hadn't heard that.
They were talking about that, they're like, by the sheer graces of God, that happened, because,
How quickly your life can change.
yeah. Go from the best moment of your life to
Moments of her life.
the possibly the worst, just snap of your fingers quick.
You know, when Dawn was, her boss boy set fire on that building. The south end of the long building where he used to pick up the log, the south end was all devoted nitrate. And firemen were really hustling, and he got it out before it reached that end.
Yeah, probably taking it out.
Yeah, I figured he's busy with.
This one is approved.
It could have been they just.
Without anything from the water shop. Change it, I'll try to save time.
I guess a Russian freight run, what was that, 2013 winter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's gonna be paying out a huge settlement somewhere. And I don't know what their requirements are over there in Lebanon with insurance and those protocols, but somebody's gonna pay big for that.
Originally, I'm from Nebraska, but we. I'm American active duty soldier.
Oh, great.
So we've got this quite a bit of a country.
That's right, next week.
But we've been here since December. And, it's, I don't want to say it's too much like Nebraska, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but it's really nice to be out in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah, very nice.
Except we have a better football team, but other than that.
I told the ladies in the office I wouldn't tell them where I was from because they were saying as long as it's not KU, so.
It's not, is it?
It's not KU.
Okay,
It's not KU.
I'd have to tell Cindy to rethink this one then.
I grew up right on the Nebraska border,
Okay.
Kansas,
Uh-huh.
and all we got was Nebraska TV.
Yeah.
So
So you watched the good football.
Big red has been drilled into my head.
Good.
And I kind of despise that.
That actually would explain quite a bit, Leon.
So I was born.
Yeah, I heard you say that, yeah.
You were right on the line.
Yeah, we were just 5 miles south.
The one time I went to see K-State play Nebraska was in 2003. That turned out pretty well, so
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that.
Well, when I was in college, we were doing really well. So, that was our back-to-back championships.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even before that, if you're from Nebraska, you bleed red. So
Yeah.
I always tell everybody when I'm out on, kind of out on the East Coast, I'm like, well, it's a state law. Yeah.
I was a big Osborne fan.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, whether or not, yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. Yeah. So, and we've got an exciting new coach now, and hopefully he's gonna maybe walk in some of those.
Oh, I'm not a Scott Ross fan.
No, I'm hoping he can be a stand-up guy.
Yeah, some of his actions, I'm just like, that makes me cringe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went to school at the same time he was
Playing.
playing, and he was a rock star.
Yeah.
But all those guys, when we were listening, are rock stars in town.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Sure.
Yep. I bet you I would do. Would you?
I want to know where you found it.
I thought I'd dress down today.
We noticed.
It's not Friday
That's
though.
it, that's it, we noticed.
No comment.
Silence was a little awkward.
No.
Oh, goodness.
I just gotta do some work afterwards, so I just didn't think I wanted to run home again.
You could have put a little rope around it, and just neck and just
Say that again?
put a little shoestring deal on it,
Oh, there you go.
It's gotta be innovative.
I'll remember that next time.
So it's a board 2 years of rotation, where these two will be in the election, and then next election, which is 2 years, will be commissioner board. You could have a 2/3 turnover. Yeah. So it's the preliminary vote results.
Do you expect, Rich, that the balloting over the next day or two will probably slow down significantly?
Yeah, what we noticed was on that large group that we got yesterday,
Mhm.
they were all postmarked election day,
Yeah,
and we're here already the next day.
so you're probably not gonna have very
If
much
it would have
today
been
or tomorrow.
postmarked a day or two
Yeah.
ahead, we thought, oh, boy, we got a couple more really big batches, so we don't anticipate, but we can run.
Okay.
There's still a large amount of ballots out there, so we could have a couple, another
That was gonna be my
900
second.
days.
Yeah.
But still, there's gonna be a segment of the population that looked at their ballot and said, there's nothing I'm familiar with, I'm not gonna vote, and then won't vote on it.
Or you could have some coming from farther away. I don't know.
Well, those
Yeah,
are provisionals.
there absolutely can
Yeah.
be some coming from farther away, for sure.
Now, the one nice thing this year is my mailbox now is not filled full of paper. I can watch the Royals game in peace, and I'm not getting 5,000 texts.
The amount of money they spend on this thing, good.
We could help the entire
We could solve the
budget.
national debt.
Yeah.
You can provide testing for everybody to get through this COVID thing. That was my thought.
And the amount of money that's spent on that.
Mhm.
Of course, you can expect a large amount of presidential advertising with no conventions this year. That's where that money's gonna get used at, so.
I think the question is now, what's COBOC doing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
there's always lawn and tree service.
It must be one of your competitors then, huh?
Yeah.
At least you
Good, was
at
he-
least you know you already got one client.
He's good at what he does as far as litigation is concerned, so he won't lose there, but I don't know.
Is that what he did before?
No. I just threw it out.
He's been trying to be a professional politician for a long time, just not quite making the cut.
That's like Bob Hamlin, he's a pretty good water skier.
I was impressed with that too.
Mhm.
I thought his commercials were a hoot.
No, they were, very entertaining.
It took me a while to figure out that all those commercials I hear in the Royals games was him.
Yeah, that one, him water skiing, I was pretty impressed.
I was too, yeah.
Had he not have been in there, it may have been a different outcome. Hamilton.
Oh, geez, Lord, they had what, like 10 people total?
I know.
It's like, you know, if you're one of those little guys that's gonna gain 1, 2, 3%, I mean, when you're doing those exploratory committees and when you're analyzing that, you need to realize, is that really worth doing?
That's what I wonder, why some of those people even bother. One guy, I think, got less than 200 votes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
why? did-
Well, I think it was a put on by groups that said, okay, let's knock one big guy out. You know, like
I don't
Hobart. And so in order to do that, they have to have a lot of people. No, almost. Time. Okay, Willis, by the time you get up there, it's gonna be time.
Okay.
There you go, see, it's time.
He was up too.
Yeah.
so, in his defense.
I can't take my mask off while I'm talking, or do you want me to leave it on?
If you.
I guess I'm
if
too
you-
close to
If you can, if it'll make you feel better.
you guys, so maybe I'll leave it on.
Go ahead.
I'm just here to make the motion for it, or not the motion, but the car that I presented to you guys, and didn't know if there's any discussion on that.
We just gotta look for a long speech.
Well, either way, I guess my question is these are, man, how long are we looking at needing these groundkeepers and facilities as we're getting kind of towards the end of summer and into fall? Do they do something else in the winter or?
Typically with Potter, the schedule is pretty busy, but regardless, if it's not, the schedule's not super busy, there's all the maintenance of the building
Okay.
and the fairgrounds and that kind of stuff. And then we also use them, like, for example, I don't know if you guys spend much time in the parks this year compared to previous years. We did a lot of tree trimming and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So we use that position as well to help us with other things within the county.
I might identify that we are only talking one position.
Right.
So
Yeah.
depending on the level, if they have their CDL, is that the requirement?
Exactly, yeah, so,
It could go up the higher level.
exactly.
If I remember right, we were originally talking to, was that right? It's been a while since we had this original discussion, so,
Yeah, there's two positions that opened up,
right.
and in fairness to some of my staff on the current crew, I want to give them opportunity to kind of interview for the position. And that's kind of the delay with putting the second one forward.
Questions, Ron?
No,
Do we have a motion?
I'm iffy on this one. That's just where I'm at.
I think Leon has something on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Commissioner Ford, you said you're iffy on this
Yeah,
one.
I'm kind of on the fence on this one.
So
just-
how do you mean that? I mean, it's a full-time position.
Okay.
It's been budgeted.
Okay.
And it's basically the person that takes care of Potter Hall and all the meetings and does all the requests, cleans up and does all that, plus helps out in parks.
Yeah,
We're not talking seasonals, so if we take the seasonals away, the only reason we've been able to maintain without that for this last month or whatever is because we've had seasonals. Now, the seasonals are leaving this Friday, so we're gonna be down a position. And if you don't fill this.
And if I can interject as well, on that, I was, just with what we've been burdened with this year, we're behind schedule on a lot of things. So without that position, it's significantly difficult to stay up with what the current demand are. And currently with the courthouse plaza and what we're doing up here, and continuing to maintain at the level we are, preference
would be to take over some of the areas within the county, so we don't have to pay someone to do those, like SERC department, that kind of stuff. So,
Because they did take on the plaza area, so we were able to do away with the contract that we had to pay to do that. And so now if we don't have the staff to do it, we're gonna have to go back and we'll have to hire somebody again to do it. So for me, that's kind of counterproductive.
So you're kind of spreading this out over the course of all county facilities. And I guess my deal with Pottero Fall is there's, other than the fair at this point in time, I don't think there's really any events going on there for the most part. So, you know, how much maintenance, how much upkeep do you have to do at this particular point in time, but.
well, like I'm saying, we're behind right now.
Okay.
Plus this position helps with the playground.
Yeah, they do the mowing, they pick up the trash in that
The
area.
bathroom, they clean the bathrooms there, they do mowing at Seacoast, so it's not just Potter Fall that they do.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, the big thing of it is just because normally Potter Falls is in use in excess of 300 days a year, but just because of COVID-19, not as much use. Maintenance of the building doesn't decline or change. So, and it's not in that top shape anyway, but for that reason, I'm going to move to approve the Public Works Department hire a full-time park employee.
John,
I'll go ahead and second.
okay, all in favor?
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
And David and Leon, I do like how the courthouse plaza office area has looked. I think you guys are doing a really good job. It does look very good. I know Leon's always very particular about that, which I've always appreciated about him being here, but it does look good what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It does, yes.
We've been working out at it hard, and there's other things we want to improve upon. It's not just the way it is right now.
This area really is, and Leon knows, we talked about, you know, the brickwork that we did out there, you know, it's kind of a showpiece area of downtown, and I'm kind of particular that it looks very nice as well, and we spent more money on that aspect just because of that landscaping issue, you know.
Yeah, I'll probably be presenting a car here at some time in the fall, things slow down a little bit, talking about Seco again and those kind of things.
Yep, that looks good, appreciate it.
You bet, appreciate it as well.
Yeah, because there's weeds never quit growing.
Especially this year.
Yeah,
Just ask Ron.
They were supposed to round up my life.
Next gentleman, you have Leon at 9:15.
yeah.
We go into the boardroom.
To the left, as you go in.
Morning, Craig.
Left side.
Well, Rich, you're coming in the west side.
Yeah.
Double wary, just right there in front.
It's terrible. So I don't know who's responsible for that, if it's Rockville or not. That's my 2 cents.
Have a good morning, yeah.
Okay.
Nice meeting you.
We have a good list of candidates, and she by far outshined all of those. She'll do very good. She has a great personality. It's amazing where she worked, high employment of Hispanics in the corporate hall world. And I called to offer the position and got her voicemail, and she, you know, goes through a little spiel. But then automatically she just rolls right into Spanish. She is tremendously fluent in Spanish.
Oh, good.
Doesn't help me one bit.
Helps me because I want her to teach me.
Oh, okay.
Most of the people, department I work with at work is Hispanic, so over the last couple of years, I've been picking up on stuff. They've been
My wife,
good about teaching me good words and some bad words too.
my wife and I both have an interest in learning. We just haven't done it.
When I was little, I could do it. Lost it all.
And my mom really didn't grow up with it because the philosophy back then,
Yeah, well, yeah, you're here, use English.
and that's how my grandma, which I wasn't her favorite grandchild, but she was very intelligent because she
Well,
knew
that
that.
explains a lot.
She knew that, and my grandma, that's all he could speak.
Yeah.
And I, until the day passed, but my grandma knew to be successful. It wasn't the thing you should do. And all of them went on to college and had great jobs, support themselves, but, so they didn't grow up with it, so I was never taught
But
it.
when you go to San Antonio, I mean, it's kind of like a second language.
Mhm.
A lot of people speak it, so.
My dad, on the other hand, Hungarian, and he grew up only speaking Hungarian,
Mhm.
but he couldn't speak a lick of it now.
Yeah,
And he has no accent or anything at all.
if you're not around it, it's hard to do. And that was part of my problem.
My dad talks exactly like I do because everyone that gets either one of us on the phone, you can't tell us apart, so he has no accent at all.
Well, you have no accent when you're around English-speaking people, but when you're
Correct.
around the other ones, they say you have an accent.
Well, it even depends on the part of the country.
I was gonna say, when I go back home to Kentucky for Thanksgiving, they're always like, you talk funny. I'm like, no, I talk perfect. It's you guys down here that talk
It was
funny.
like Pat introduced his new guy, you could
Yeah,
tell there was
yeah.
an accent there.
Midwest dialect is a little bit more close to that old English dialect because how everybody kind of migrated. So
So John, what, is Kentucky free?
Yeah,
You're from
yeah.
Kentucky, what part of Kentucky was it?
just south of Louisville, down on the Fort Knox area.
That'd be south.
Well, it's south, but latitude, how much south of us?
No, it's that part of the country back 100 years ago was,
Oh, I
the
know
south.
it was considered part of the south, but that was the part that always got me was we're not anchored, geographically.
Oh, no, Kentucky.
I grew up about 15 minutes from birthplace of Lincoln. A
Okay.
lot of people think he was born in Illinois. He was not. But
because you're also touching West Virginia,
yeah.
other places like that.
Technically, from a geographical perspective, if you're south of the Ohio River, they kind of consider it south.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah, we've been,
basically right there on that line, pretty much.
It's one area of the country I've never been to.
Yeah.
yeah, we've been there quite a bit.
For me, probably early mid-fall, is probably the prettiest there with the Appalachians and stuff, and trees change color and differences in dew points and stuff in the morning. You get the bluegrass. I mean, it literally you get this haze that falls over the grass and it makes everything underneath it look bluish, grayish. It's really pretty, but my area has a lot of, since it's on the river, kind of the riverbed there, it's got a lot of caves and caverns and kind of
So
hilly
is
up and down.
Mammoth Cave is in
Yeah.
Kentucky, is it?
Yes. Yeah, been there. I went there when I was second or third grade. We took a field trip.
Yeah, that was interesting. We've been there. I've been there a couple
Yeah.
times.
There's a lot of stuff to do in our area. I mean, you've got, of course, Louisville. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to do there. We've got, obviously, lots of Lincoln-related museums and related stuff. They've got a whiskey tour. There's like 10 different distilleries that you can go to, and they've got different functions.
By the end, you never remember it.
If you do them all, the funny part about it is 8 of them are pretty close by, and then 2 of them are on opposite ends of the state. So,
I was told I was on a whiskey distillery.
yeah. My uncle and grandfather worked security at Jim Beam for well, my grandfather well over 20 years. And he's got a pretty neat retirement gift.
That would be fun to go and see some of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, that's
I know neon's big in the history.
a lot of people like
Just
going.
don't tell Cheryl.
But downtown Louisville's pretty cool. I mean, you got kind of the University Stadium grounds, and it kind of backs right up to Churchill Downs. That's another cool place to visit,
would be
obviously.
cool.
I've been there one year, 82 or 83 during Derby weekend. That was pretty cool. And then over across the way, you got the Louisville Bats, which is the AA or AAA affiliate. I think they're the Reds now.
And the Derby was really cool, is all the hats.
Yeah, oh yeah. But you get rows and rows of obviously horse trailers, RVs. I mean, just looks like one big, huge tailgating party or something. I'll put it in perspective here, but
Cheap horses too.
yes, yeah.
So is there any possibility of getting a ticket for that event?
For church, to go to the Derby,
Yeah.
you need to probably apply for it probably at least a full year in advance.
Time, Leon.
I heard it was on the ticket to come.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning.
Leon Hodson, Director of Public Works. Here this morning to ask you to start the process to dispose of some equipment that is no longer needed. Still has some value, but has been replaced with other I don't know where I'm at here.
Keep going.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And so we have the pieces of equipment that are listed here on the exhibit, which is kind of sideways here. But, there are a couple fire trucks, and the Chevy Suburban is from the EMS department. And then Public Works has the double-walled liquid storage tank that we've had for many, many years and have not used it once. I mean, it came from the old shop up to there with us, and we'd had intentions of using it as a backup at one time, and that just hasn't ever worked out. Didn't feel like we needed it anymore. And so we wanted to go ahead and get rid of it as well as those other items. And again, the two are fire trucks. The first two are fire trucks, and the next one is the Suburban is from EMS. And you might notice on the contract that and some of the signatures that Purple Wave asked us just keep the same contract, change the date
Okay.
down here. I mean, that's why, and that's what we did last time was they just asked us to change the date on it and send it in. They would like to keep the same contract rather than changing it all the time.
Yep.
So that was the reason for that. Any comments, questions?
No, you just
I don't
answered the
have
question I had, so.
We get a motion, guys?
I'll make a motion that we approve contract for Purple Wave.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All three, please.
Where do those proceeds go again?
Well, those proceeds will, the fire trucks will go back into the
Okay.
fire district. EMS and Public Works will go back into the auction fund, which eventually gets transferred somewhere.
Okay.
To the general fund. No, just somewhere.
Well, generally goes to CIP.
Yeah. He always comes in and makes the plug and use it for replacement equipment.
Does it matter if he signed where I was supposed to sign technically?
As long as all three of your signatures are on there, I attested, it will be good.
We'll put little arrows.
Fair enough. It's last year's contract, I think that's
Oh.
why. Yeah,
They always put me on the bottom, I just automatically, okay.
Thank you.
yeah. We train ourselves pretty well. That's okay. I think I even see Mike Hearn's name on one of them somewhere there. when I was
Yeah.
looking through it, yeah.
That was a goof up in the main office there.
Had to be. We didn't do it.
Had to be, yeah, mine's always the bottom.
So who's paying the $20? That's all I'm worried about.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Leon. Next we have Greg McHenry at 9:30.
Okay. Well, I sure enjoyed this beautiful weather this week, but I knew it wasn't gonna last.
It's leaving us. It's leaving us.
I think it's already left. I woke up this morning, was like,
Yeah, but it looks like there might be a touch that come back next week.
I'll take it.
Kind of makes you wonder what fall or winter's gonna bring, you know, so
I kind of hope it stays a little warm this year for a lot of different reasons.
maybe a lot of snow.
The heat hasn't necessarily shown to be a benefit though.
No. But if it didn't show to be a benefit, cold's not gonna be any better either.
I can just mention California and Florida right now.
You can throw Arizona in there too for good measure.
Give me the cold.
Yeah, the lady called yesterday, says, we had a cancellation, is there any chance that we could come in Thursday, put that park after better instead of Friday? Get her that.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So I raced through yesterday and hung all the new doors and trimmed them and yeah, it just didn't match the bedrooms. You know, it's, you just want to finish up the kitchen and it looks slow. I got to thinking it's the fault of the floor installer and the sheet rocker and the cabinet maker, and the electrician and the plumber. He's all the same person.
Yep.
It's frustrating. But one of these prices, I even talked to the Lignus boys, you know, friends and stuff, you know, and how do you guys like to help out? Yeah, we get 45 an hour. And that's like old Ronnie's gonna be doing it.
I was gonna say, they're cutting you a deal. Yeah. How's Greg?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Hi. Ron, how's your remodeling project coming along?
Don't answer that right.
Yeah.
That's what we just got done talking about, his frustration when you came in, so now you really frustrated him.
Well, that's not why I was saying not to talk to him.
I was just curious if you're.
He is the appraiser, you know.
That's true. Yeah, Ron, be careful what you say. He's
I
the
didn't know where you
appraiser.
lived.
No, not changing anything, just cleaning it up.
Let's see what fixed income's like for you, Lee.
Yeah, not adding a thing.
I was just curious if you're able to get materials and.
Low grade materials, huh?
Huh?
Low grade
Oh,
materials,
absolutely.
huh?
So Sorry, I opened that can of worms.
How's Greg?
Good, how are you, Mark?
All right.
How's your wife?
She's coming along much, much better. The lady was in for physical therapy yesterday, telling her that, maybe she needs a railing here or that. And she says, I don't need no railing. So it's
good.
come along better. She just, it's just been a tough time for her.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Morning.
Hi.
Has she gotten a longer cane yet, so she can reach you a little better?
She's moving a little faster, so gotta be careful there. But I put in all the stuff that's necessary for them.
Did it pass her inspection? I never heard.
Yeah, I didn't
Yes,
hear
it
that.
did.
It did.
Good.
That's a first.
Yeah, it's first. Generally, you painted it the wrong color, doesn't match.
She may have you up on YouTube.
That would be a switch. Still looking forward, Craig, if we can make that. If I have not gotten a update on the Black Republican shooting in September. I heard it was September, okay, but I have not heard if it got canceled, because that was last year at sometime in November, when I went to a meeting and they were talking about it, whether or not they were going to process that.
Yeah, I would think that would be an event that could go on outdoors. And
Yeah.
spread out, but you never know in this environment,
Yeah.
what's gonna come off and what won't.
That's for sure.
Still got to see if I can catch your totals.
We'll have to practice, huh?
Yeah.
There's something about that new building going out by the Speedway down the Kansas Speedway, that Urban Outfit, what do they call it?
Yeah, Urban Outfitters.
1 million square feet, will take 2 years to build a building.
What's an Urban Outfitters? I've heard of it.
Clothing
Deal, and it's a distribution center, it's gonna employ, I don't know, like
2,000
people. And,
2,000.
oh, really?
Up to
Oh, it's
2,000.
what, 350 million in the
Yeah.
economy or something now.
Hmm.
That's gonna be a shot in the arm for.
That's a good deal all the way around from the way it
Yeah.
sounds. Really does.
Hadn't heard of that.
Governor brought it up yesterday at her press conference. I think that's,
Yeah, in the paper there last month.
yeah.
Gave that up to Lynn.
Yep. Well,
You get one of those a little closer to home here, and that would be really good.
Companies are looking towards the middle of the country more and more and more. It makes sense logistically.
You're right.
That's another reason why I think we got to have good, better broadband and wireless too as an attraction point. That's just me.
Well, that'll force the issue then.
Well,
Yes.
on that front, I mean, we have been contacted by, I think, Twin Valley about that for our rural areas just yesterday.
Okay.
So Monty's making those connections for us.
Good.
And the spark funds and all that good stuff.
It
So
wasn't that,
My hope is that some of those, like a Twin Valley, may be able to attach to our communications tower and offset some of the costs of that too. So it's a double benefit.
wasn't it so, Robert Demi was always complaining because that belonged to Cox or AT&T area, and they didn't want to do anything.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah.
That's like, there's a portion of the county that isn't, but I have better service than you guys do in the city of Manhattan. I've got a T1 line directly to my house that Twin Valley put in years ago because I was in their area.
Mhm.
I got a T1 line to my house. Rod Meredith always used to complain, Fargo's got better internet than we do.
Yeah, but
It's
some of
just that most of the
huge
smaller
investment.
companies like a Twin Valley don't have enough internal capital to invest in the
Well,
fiber and the
part of-
infrastructure to do it.
that is part of it. Part of it was the fact that, like any utility, they have an area that's theirs.
No, they actually did their whole area, John. The issue was that.
Yeah,
It wasn't
you
their
have
area.
there, and no one else can come into it. Now, if that area can convince the Kansas Corporation Commission to say, yes, the customers need to be served, and since you don't want it, we'll give it to the other place.
Uh-huh.
That can happen, and that's what they're trying
Yeah,
to do right
because
now.
the whole Twin Valley area in rural Riley County got T1 lines to it.
Or you open it up and the competition actually makes customer service and the product
Mhm,
maybe
yeah.
actually better too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've got great service out there.
But it doesn't matter to fight the internal battles, the statutory or legislative battles, if you don't have the capital to do it to start with, and that's where you're gonna have to start with this.
Now there's some capital available.
Right.
Greg, by the time you get up there, it'll be time.
Sounds like a plan. So good morning.
Good morning.
I'm gonna go through my outline and kind of like last month when I talked to you, try to go over one of our approaches to value. We talked about the income approach last month, and I'll go over the cost approach this time as well. Speaking of the income approach, those income and expense surveys that we mail out every year to all of our commercial property owners were mailed August 3rd. And this year, we included a series of additional questions kind of related to the potential impact of the pandemic on the rental market. So we're trying to give folks an opportunity to let us know what's different because of the pandemic. Have leases been rewritten? Have concessions been made? All of the above, those kinds of things are going on. We know to some degree, we're trying to gauge how much. And we want to make sure that we take that into consideration as we start setting values for 2021. And again, we use those income expense surveys to analyze the rental market for commercial properties and apartment buildings. And, a question I get a lot of times is, I'm an owner-occupied building. How does this questionnaire apply to me? And we always encourage people, even if they're an owner-occupied business in a commercial building, to send those in, because we're not just looking at the income side of it, what a building would lease for per square foot. We're also looking at expenses like property insurance, repairs and maintenance, those kinds of things that any property owner would experience, or any property owner leasing to a business would experience. So it's important that we get as much feedback as we possibly can. And I would just encourage anybody who is a commercial property owner to contact us if they have any questions or fears about completing it. Some people think that it's not to their benefit if they complete them. I always say it's to their benefit to help us be as accurate as we possibly can. We don't want to overvalue or undervalue anyone's property. We're trying to put market value on the property, and that information helps us do that. We are also, we just completed actually yesterday, working with the IT department here to do an online survey that we're going to roll out towards the end of the year. So about November 30th, we'll mail, or shortly before then, we'll mail postcards to these same folks and give them a chance to let us know if anything has changed since now. And given the environment we're in, that could very likely be the case.
They're gonna be really surprised.
Yeah. We haven't seen a lot of commercial sales, number one, in this market. We've seen some commercial construction, but not a lot of commercial sales. And, people are, I think in a lot of cases, struggling to keep their retail space full or leased, or, the restaurant in Aggieville or downtown, able to stay in business, and the property owner be able to maintain the property. So it's, it's a tight situation out there for folks, and we just want to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard and let us know what's different and how much different it is. So we're going to kind of measure that income expense market at 2 different periods of time this year. We've also completed our pre-conversion work for the Orion MVP program. And remember, that is that new cost system that goes into our Orion program. This has gone better than we'd hoped even so far. And it looks like we'll do the final installation actually next week. Right now they have us on the schedule for late next week. And there will probably be a week or so, maybe 2, of kind of us testing it to make sure we haven't missed something. We want to see what impact the changes would have on our values, our cost approach values. So we'll do that, but we should easily be done by the end of August, first week of September at the latest. And that's a better schedule than what we had hoped for initially. In addition to busy summer field work, some of our appraisers are busy taking classes and workshops. Many of us in the office have a license or designation that we have continuing education hours to complete every 4 years, every 5 years for designation. And with all the cancellations of courses, we're having to catch up a little bit. But we're fortunate in that IAAO and then also our Kansas County Appraiser Association work together to kind of make some possibilities that are cost effective for us, that are either online or live online. Live online is basically watching the instructor via Zoom, something similar. And that's been very, very helpful. We're starting to catch up a little bit. We've had several students just in the last 3 weeks take courses, and we have several scheduled yet for the fall that we'll need to keep up with those continuing ed credits. Excuse me. The deadline for the RMAs, Registered Mass Appraisal License, that many of us have is June 30th of 2021. And typically most of the courses are late spring, summer, and fall. So we are really pushing it to try to make sure we get caught up and get those knocked out this year if at all possible. Unless a course isn't offered for some reason that we need, we're going to try to complete those continuing ed hours by the end of the year. And we're optimistic we can do that with the new delivery systems available to us for courses. We are also hosting an in-person class here August 17th through 21st. There'll be 11 students from across the state coming here for that class. We're happy to be able to do that. It brings a little business into the community, and it also lets us reduce our costs and expenses to the county a little bit for any students from our office that attend the class. But in addition to our folks, there'll be 11 others that will be coming here. So we're glad that's working out. The Commercial Appraiser 2 position has been filled, and that was a blessing. And we are fortunate that Jessica Cruz started her career here July 28th. She's doing very well. I think we hit a home run. She's a very good learner, asked tons of questions, and has just really fit in well with the commercial team. Melanie Berry in our office is her direct supervisor, but she works also with Steve, Shirley in my office, and myself to some degree. And we're very, very happy and hope to keep her. She will get a little bit of a late start on education courses because those introductory classes so far have been canceled and not rescheduled. The ones that would have been held in May and June and July. So it'll probably be sometime after the first of the year before she's able to dive into that. And that's okay. I mean, it would be a little better if she could take some of them ahead of schedule, but she's probably going to know quite a bit about what she's doing by the time she takes the classes, and that's not a bad thing either. The governor has directed or has appointed a director at Board of Tax Appeals. He started there July 1st. That is the position that oversees the office, basically. But it's also a position that can serve as a hearing officer if they're down a person. And they only have one board member now other than this director. So the director began filling in as a board member, kind of doing dual roles until they get the other two open positions filled. And those would be, one would need to be CPA and one would need to be certified general appraiser. And if you remember, the governor did have a candidate for the appraiser position, and it was kind of shot down or stalled late in the legislative session. We've been told that that person may get another review sometime after the first of the year. I hope so. He's a gentleman I know very, very well. He's a longtime commercial appraiser, fee appraiser in the Kansas City area. He has done appraisals for counties and he's done appraisals for property owners appealing their values. So I see him as a very objective, thorough, experienced appraiser. Hopefully they'll take another look at that position. That would take a lot of pressure off of Board of Tax Appeals backlog of cases that we're a part of, unfortunately, as you see the list that we have at the bottom of the page there. But we'll keep you posted on that if anything comes up. They are really struggling to find someone for the CPA position. And, you know, when you think about it, if you're a practicing CPA, why would you take a pay cut to look at both? So that's been the issue. So far in 2020, we've had 881 real estate sales through July 31st. 676 of those have been home sales. That number of sales is right at slightly higher than a year ago. The residential market here just keeps perking along as you talk to realtors and lenders and some of the other folks that are in the private sector and real estate here. I think they would tell you the same thing. You know, the length of time on market is still fairly short. One difference, substantial difference from a year ago and 2 years ago would be inventory. There are a lot fewer homes listed for sale that when they come available, they move pretty quickly. And so far at prices that are at or slightly more than a year ago too. Our median sale price for homes is $179,900, basically $180,000. And we've talked about that the last several months that we're in a more Corollas than Camrys kind of market, and that trend has continued. The average sale price was $203,030. That's a little higher than a month ago. You kind of expect that to be the case in our normal market here as we get through the summer months. You know, those are when the majority of our sales occur, and that's when our sale prices are typically the highest during the course of the year. Our median sales ratio for residential properties, which of course median sales ratio is county's value divided by actual sale price. So the composite of that is 98%. That's good. We like to be between 98 and 99%. That's a reflection of, by and large, having accurate residential home values, which is our only horse in the race. We're just trying to meet those state thresholds. In addition, there have been 197 building permits in 2020 through July 31st. And just kind of anecdotally, as we go through those at the end of every month, and that would be city, county, small cities, there are fewer new homes built, but there are an awful lot of remodeling projects. And just talking to a few folks that are in the supply side of construction business here in town, Mead Lumber and others, I think they would tell you the same thing. You know, they're getting a lot of remodels, additions, those kinds of things, maybe a few less homes being built on the Riley County side of the Manhattan area. The Potawatomi County side, another matter. They're still building a lot of new homes over there. And of course, the price point's different over there as well. We do have several Board of Tax Appeals cases currently docketed. Home Depot is going forward for 2 days in October, finally. And they added 2020 to that list. We kind of assumed they might, but so that will be 2 days looking at 2018 value and 2020 value. We're fairly fortunate that the oldest case we have on that list is 2 years. There are counties that have 2015 and 2016 and 2017 cases yet to be heard. and most of them are large commercial properties. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was waiting for you to finish. I'm curious about Genesis up there at this particular point in time. Are they still moving forward in their construction process?
It's hard to tell when you drive by.
Well, we got the list saying that they pulled their land and environmental use permit, so it seemed like to me that that's kind of nixed at this particular point in time. So how would that change potentially the value of the property and or how you would
That's a good
go
question.
about standing up for that?
Yeah, in their case, as a partial construction, we appraise properties based on January 1st status.
Okay.
So whatever is there January 1st of every year determines how we value it. And it was a partially constructed building then, not as as fully constructed as it is now even. That's the value of appeal. When we value partial constructions, a lot of emphasis is put on talking to the builders, talking to the property owner. How much do you have in this property? What do you anticipate it's going to be worth when it's done, and what percent complete are you? So really, we're dependent on what they tell us to a large extent, and have been with this one. If it goes on, let's say it goes into January of 21, and nothing has changed from its status now, we're going to value it based on its status, January 1.
Okay.
So it's still going to be a partial construction. I've heard varying stories about Genesis, and I've seen some marketing efforts on their part talking about opening and selling memberships, and so I'm really not sure what's going on there.
But you would have to take this particular case to BOTA based on the beginning of 2020, not 2021,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So
And
to me, it seems kind of pointless at this point in time to fight that when you have developed that building a little bit further during 2020 at least.
We were pretty surprised that they appealed. It's not very typical that someone appeals a partial construction because we're usually very conservative on our estimate of value. We don't, especially in a new construction situation, we want to err on the side of the property owner. And our value is based on what they told us. So I'm not sure what their argument will be, and they haven't provided us anything to have any idea what they're proposing, what value they're proposing, or what their arguments are about it. There's a tax rep involved in the case, as there typically are in these, but don't know at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll definitely keep you posted. As you can see, most of those properties on the list are larger retail type properties, and hypothetical lease fee is in play in every one. So that dark store issue that we've talked about now for 3 or 4 years, I guess, will be in full play, and starting with the Home Depot cases in October. Real quickly, I'll talk about the cost approach. We do 3 approaches to value: income approach, which we talked about last month, cost approach, and comparable sales approach, and I'll go over that next month. The cost approach is all based on the premise that there is a replacement cost new for every structure, and there is some amount of depreciation that can typically occur based on the age of the property. And when we say replacement cost new, we're not saying reproduction cost. So if the Wareham burned down, we're not saying what it would cost to reproduce it using, those historical building materials and standards. We're talking about what it would cost in today's building standards, construction materials, et cetera. In many cases, that's actually more, because there are building codes in place now for things like interior fire protection systems, sprinklers, those kinds of things in commercial buildings. We get our replacement cost new from that what we call Marshall Swift service, or CoreLogic is the company that owns it. Those cost tables, those are the same that are used in the insurance industry and in the fee appraisal world nationally. So we're kind of all on the same page in that regard. We calculate depreciation from local sales. So if a property that's 10 years old sells, we subtract out the land portion of that sale price, And what's left, figure E tells us what the building's contributory value was. And so we compare that to the actual replacement cost, and that gives us the amount of depreciation then based on that sale price. So that's how we build our depreciation tables for the cost approach. I just gave you a quick example here of a $1 million building. You know, when I started my career here, $1 million building was quite a building. Anymore, it's just kind of average.
Now we're getting into the B's.
Yeah.
The billions.
We are. So we have $1 million building. We can tell from our sales of commercial properties, similar commercial properties, that based on its age, that depreciation rate would be about 25%. So we're subtracting the 25% or $200,000. That gives us a building value of $800,000. Then we simply add it to land values, and we get land values from sales as well. $150,000 land value and an $800,000 building value would give us a cost approach value then of $950,000. So that kind of in layman's terms is what the cost approach is all about. People ask me, why don't you just use cost approach for all values? The problem with the cost approach is as buildings get older and older, the cost approach is a less reliable way to value a property. It's pretty accurate for newer properties. Maybe those that are in their first 5 to 10 years of existence. Beyond that, you know, the sale prices that we see and our cost approach values that we calculate get further and further apart. And that's when we rely more heavily on income approach for commercial properties or comparable sales. But, you know, as we have talked about before, all three approaches come from sale prices in some form or fashion. In this case, it's the land portion of the value and that depreciation rate. So if you get any tough questions about cost approach from any of your constituents, send them my way.
I got a whole list of them. I'm just going to send them to you.
That's fine. You know, a big part of our appeals process really is an education process for us as well as the property owner. And we are more than happy to sit down with people and show them how we arrived at a value and show them the cost table, show them the models that we're using for income approach, our sales grids, all of those things. They have a right to know, and we're happy to help them in that way. And if we're wrong, we definitely want to change it because we're rated on our work. If that property would sell and sell for something more or less than the value that we put on it, depending on how different that is, that's a reflection of our work, and we want to make sure that we're accurate. Ron.
If you have a property and you know the land value, and this property has an old, efficient building that's not usable,
Right.
and so do you figure in what the cost of demolition would be to make the land usable?
That's a great question, and the short answer would be yes. And that happens a lot, as you all probably know, east of the campus, as an example. Those redevelopment areas, you know, an old house that's maybe 80 years old or older, that's been a rental house for many years, might be on its last leg. The value is in the site and the land when they assemble that lot with 2 or 3 others and redevelop it. But in any case, the price that investor typically pays is a reflection of their thinking about what the costs are going to be to do the demo work and improve the site. So we do look at that. A bigger example is Home Depot years ago. They put a ton of work into the site improvement.
Yeah.
And that's why, one of the reasons they paid the cost per square foot they did. It could have been greater than what they paid if that site would not have needed so much work. In that case, a lot of infill. Yeah. I think that's it. Great question.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for that 9:55, gentlemen.
Okay.
Hi, Tammy.
Did get an update on that high performance leadership series a week or so ago. because they considered that IAOO cohort such a
Yeah,
success,
yeah.
that they're going to try to start developing some more of those types for other interdepartments, including public health and public works. So kind of a trial model, and they were very impressed with how it worked out.
I thought it was an awesome program. Our folks were all three challenged by it, and they're already putting some of the things they learned into practice.
Good deal.
I think one of the best things about the program was it does a good job of focusing on developing your leadership skills.
Yeah.
So whether you're newer in your career or been there a while, you know, the practices that you can put into play are the same. And as we, with all these baby boomers like myself retiring in the next few years, that's going to be a need.
Yeah. There's a lot of,
Developing leaders.
yeah, there's a lot of gaps in some places.
Yeah.
Getting close?
Close, not quite.
Not quite there.
30 seconds, maybe.
15.
Okay. Maybe more than 15.
Coming right there.
I'm watching on here.
Okay. It's now time.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Tammy Robinson, Budget and Finance Officer. I have a short update on the CARES funding. We met with the consultant yesterday and went through the funding requests, and with those, we looked at the comparison to what is available versus what we have to give. And we do, as I've said before, have more requests than what we have in funding. The consultant did give us good information on methods that we should use to consider in calculating those distributions. So then again, yesterday at 3 o'clock, the Budget and Planning Committee met once again after that meeting to go back over those numbers with proposals. And we have some preliminary numbers that we have pulled together, and we expect to have our recommendations to the commission on August 13th. We will be meeting with the consultant again on Monday to finalize what we've been talking about to bring to you for consideration. You know that August 15th is the deadline. Since that falls on a weekend, we actually have till August 17th. But by bringing it to you on August 13th, hopefully you accept our recommendations. Otherwise, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and have to come back to you with additional recommendations again on Friday. I do know that you've had people reaching out to you, and we've had people reaching out to us as well. We are trying to make everything consistent and fair across the board as much as possible, and trying not to leave anyone out. So with that, we're looking not only at the municipalities, but trying to incorporate the businesses, the nonprofits, which includes churches, mental health, all of those that are asking for funds and assistance. The one thing to keep in mind, as we've said always, is that there are 2 additional rounds of money coming down. Some of those needs that we're unable to provide for, those next 2 rounds should help subsidize what they're lacking with these funds. We have been reaching out to the entities, trying to get a lot of clarification on their needs. It's kind of daunting to realize that we had 15 million to use and it doesn't come close to tapping our needs, but we are doing the best we can, and the consultant is giving us information and food for thought to help make those decisions. So next Thursday should be our day where we bring those recommendations.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
On that, I do anticipate, the 13th, I'm concerned with us presenting it to you guys that date. And like Tammy said, to me, maybe an unrealistic expectation that you just accept that, given all that you've heard from other entities and organizations, because it's a lot to address. The staff have spent, I don't know how many Zoom calls with either the consultant or just our own group, discussing this, and, one of the primary factors on the consultant's recommendation is how much some of these other entities, the school districts and K-State, have already received, as opposed to those like the city of Manhattan and Riley County that have received none or very little at this point. And so it's kind of like an algebraic equation to try and figure, and we're adjusting it all the time. And so Tammy said fair, and fair is going to be in the eye of the beholder, as we all know. And so some entities, we're not going to recommend get possibly near what they're asking for. But as we say, the money's absorbed in other areas. And so I anticipate you guys will have a lot of questions, because has been a very daunting task, and it's been changing on us every time we have a meeting on how to approach it. So just know that we've been spending a tremendous amount of time to try and be as equitable as possible with everyone, but you guys, I'm sure, may have some significant questions about it. And if it comes to it, I mean, we'll see where it goes, but having to have it by the 17th after you see it for the first time on the 13th, the weekend in there, you guys might want to consider a meeting on the 14th for an hour if you guys want us to check on some things. But because the turnaround time is going to be, and that was our primary concern, remember when we came to you guys, this unrealistic calendars that we have on this stuff. So it's been a trying process for us all, and Monty's in the back there, and we've all brought different things to the table for ideas to consider.
One thing I want to point out, and I think this is very important for the public to hear, is Riley County could actually cap 5% of the total CARES funds for administration of this. And with our meeting yesterday, that is something that they chose not to do. So I want the public very aware that the dollars that they could have pulled for that admin are not being used for that purpose. Those funds will be used for anything that we can and need to allocate it towards before December 30th.
Good. How does this potential next round of stimulus play into all this? Or does it?
As far as what we know will be
What we
funded,
can and can't do at this point in time, or what may or may be.
it doesn't affect what we can or can't do, because, ours is guided by municipalities as our main target with this. And if there's anything left, then it can go to your businesses and your outside entities.
Okay.
But, the second round is geared towards the education and the businesses, specifically rent, helping with people who have rent or utility needs. So there's money available, but they also say they don't want you to not use these funds for those purposes. It's just that the second round is used to subsidize whatever you're unable to meet. So while we're keeping that in mind, we're not trying to avoid giving any distributions to entities because of that. I mean, we're still trying to give everybody with needs something. But, and I think I tried to say consistent rather than fair, because like Rich said, fair is probably not possible in everyone's eyes. However, the methods that we're employing are on a consistent basis, and that's what we're using for our methodology. So it makes sense as to why we're bringing these numbers to you and how we calculated them. Not because we're picking on anybody or saying, well, we don't want to give you money. We're just trying to be consistent in the methodology.
Yes.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the question's pretty broad. But the future rounds of funding, round 2 and 3, the consultants keeping.
No, I was talking at the federal level with what maybe, yeah.
Well,
He
even the federal level, our consultant yesterday on the meeting said he was up last night watching the federal and what's coming down. And what they're recommending to us, they are considering, okay, this group, we can fund them now, but remember, these groups aren't going to have a chance for any more money, but these groups are going to continue to have allocations of additional funding. So that is something that they are considering in their.
I mean, just with the uncertainty of that particular discussion and negotiation, how does it play into the scenario that's already uncertain and we're trying to figure out?
And it does play into it, because part of the methodologies that he gave us in calculating this distributions is taking into consideration what may be approved with those funds that will be coming down. And it's not approved with those funds necessarily, it's how it may impact what we can and can't do with what we have now. So we're looking at those aspects and part of our calculations.
Fair enough.
Ron, anything? Okay. Well, thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Yep, we'll plan on being here next week.
Okay,
So we'll wait.
Thank you.
Monty.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Lonnie Weedle, Planning and Development Director. You have my sheet here. I'm not going to go through that in detail. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer that. I do have several things that I wanted to highlight, though. First and foremost, my replacement, Amanda, is going to be starting September 1. So I've been working on, getting ready for that transition. That's my number one priority. So a lot of work to do there. You probably saw on the sheet that the regulations, I'm going to have a work session with the Urban Area Planning Board. That's really the only entity left that I haven't really spent a lot of time with. So I'm going to get their feedback. I have received response from the committee, steering committee that we had, and no one really had any issues with any of the articles. So potentially after that Urban Area Planning Board work session, if they don't have any significant concerns, we might proceed to public hearing for adoption. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. We are working on illustrations that we want to put in there. So once we get the wording all figured out, we're going to have to get that ready. Probably not realistic that we're going to be able to get through all the public hearings and everything before I retire, but should have it, in good shape to be able to finalize it fairly easily. But we'll see. The other news is that thanks to Lori and Rich's office, we're ready to file that notice of potential noise impact that we've been working on. Basically, the Register of Deeds is okay with it, I think, and all we're waiting on is a check to get it filed. So that's, once that's done, I'll make sure everybody is notified that needs to be notified of that. So, realtors, title companies, all of those folks. So
That's easy to say, but that was a very big project.
very, very big project. And thank you to Lori Muir for helping out with that, which we would never got it done. So I'm gonna have to give her.
Like everything around here, it's a team effort, but that was a very big project.
Yeah. And lastly, you probably heard we got 167,000 awarded from the CDBG. So part of that is going to go to the meal programs and Ogden and Leonardville. So actually, we're going to sign the grant agreement on Monday, and then get to work on implementing that, getting that money out. So the remainder, 35,000 is going to go to the meals program, and then the remainder would go to job retention. And going to be working with the chamber on getting that implemented, so getting that money out. And quite a bit of work tracking to do there as well. So that's kind of what I'm working on to try to wrap things up here by September 21.
Good.
Any questions on anything?
I don't have any.
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Monty.
Thanks, gentlemen. I plan to see it 10:15.
Okay, it's on through. Resend it. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not there. I'll just resend it. Okay.
Greg, regarding Ron's question about the lots, one of the more prominent property management company owners or property investment company owners in town, who him and I talked about it, and he's analyzing different ones that come up, and he says he does not know how these groups are paying what they're paying for those, because really they're not paying what Ron's saying, they're paying for the land and the house.
Yeah.
Right.
Paying that much basically for a lot, and he says, I don't know how those guys do that. It's just unreal.
Definitely doesn't cash flow when you look at the annual rent, something like that. It just doesn't. I guess in some cases, people are sheltering money.
I wish we could do what Ron says. If that's the case, that would make a lot more opportunities available, but you
Yeah.
can't do that in this town.
No, there's still a lot of optimism about the future. And I think that's what drives some of those prices.
Well, and so many of us, I mean, you get a lot of outside money too, but somebody just has to figure out where to put that 1031 exchange money. You know, like you say, it's the sheltering.
I see nationally there's a big debate between the two parties about whether to continue that program or not. And not delving into politics, but if that program went away, that would be a huge impact on commercial real estate market. A lot of people have made their investments based on it, whether we like it or not.
There's corn done.
Soybeans I got this year.
Got the soybeans.
Soybeans, yeah, they're awesome. Man, they
I'll bet.
look good. Deer are enjoying them.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they look good, really good.
I might mention that to a couple of my deer, that that'd be a good place for them to go on up. And
Yeah, it's a little bit of a travel for them, but if they may find it. Yeah, the soybeans look awesome. It's unreal. And our fields look really good because my son and I took the time this year to go all the way around the perimeter and clean up all the dead lumber and stuff and get it out of there. And then we took our brush hog around all of them, you know, so it looks really nice and pretty and cleaned up well. Makes it easier on the equipment for, you know, seeding and then cutting too. They don't go worry about trees or whatnot being in there. So yeah, they look really good. Get my quarter of beef tomorrow, so that's good. Farmer had an extra cow he was taking and had some extra meat, so got that since the supply chain is low on that anymore. He said he tried to schedule some more, and next time he could get in wasn't until like July of next year.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
He said, we may be butchering the next one ourselves. I said, that's fine, we can do that. They usually get a half, but all they had available on this one was a quarter, but I'd gotten a half not too long ago, so
Mhm.
I'm okay. soybean crop or whatever crop pays for it. Kind of just a barter with him for our meat supply, you know, so. I really don't have to have any, the only meat we really buy is chicken at the store, you know, grocery store. And I'm actually not even gonna do that this year because the lady in the office, her and her husband got into raising chickens, meat chickens. So I'm buying about 20 chickens from them this fall that they're raising, so I'm looking forward to that.
You're on, Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
The car I have in front of you is for, just to advise you to get your approval basically to send into the Kansas Association of Counties several legislative request forms. The two that I've got are ones that are going to be eerily familiar because they've been on the platform before. KAC supports both of these. In fact, the first one on constitutional protection of county home rule was made their top priority during the previous legislative session. There was no action on it during this most recent session, and I'm confident that KAC's Legislative Policy Committee, which is my card described, is going to be 2 times fairly quickly coming up to consider all counties' requests. I'm confident they'll be okay with this continuing to be a legislative request. I'm also perfectly confident the second item, the item on the hypothetical lease fee as a means of meeting the appraisal theory of dark store. It's not called that by the proponents. It was a media creation some time ago. But the problem is, the practical problem is that dark store appraisal values, as the car points out, as you're well aware, result in artificially lowered non-fair market value appraised values for real property. And while that's a great thing for whoever is getting that single benefit of a dramatically reduced appraised value that does not reflect fair market value, it's not fair to everyone else. It's not fair to those who have to make up the difference somehow for the operating expenses and it's not fair on a common sense level, because if they have similar, truly comparable properties, there's no reason for them not to be paying the same value. In fact, our state constitution requires uniform and equal rates of assessment. And one of the downrange, potentially really bad impacts of the spread of the dark store appraisal theory, as you are well aware, is it could lead to the need for statewide reappraisal of real properties if this continues to succeed across the state. Very easily could be back where we were few decades ago, and many will remember what a drain on local resources and time that was for reappraisal. Something that probably ought to be avoided at all costs. The documents that are attached to the cars are ones you've seen before. There's nothing new in those, and I will expect to, and of course, these legislative policy committee meetings are both going to be by a familiar Zoom call. No surprise there. I'll participate, and if one commissioner wants to participate, you're certainly welcome to do so as well. We can talk about that as we approach the first meeting next week. Unless somebody is just can't wait.
Is that next, what day was that next week? Is that Tuesday?
No, it's actually at the end of the week. It'd be the 14th. It'd be Friday. I got the date. Yes, it would be Friday.
What time?
They haven't sent out that detail yet. They haven't sent out the Zoom invitation either. The last notice we got, the most recent one I'm aware of, said that as we approach the date, we'll get something.
Okay. I may or may not, but we'll see.
Okay. I'll let you know that it's coming up, and anybody who wants to participate on the board is obviously. So,
Okay.
we've also got Greg McHenry from the County Appraiser has a couple of items that he and I have discussed previously. And to me, they make sense in terms of being potentially presented to KAC by us, that be added to put into place, possibly have KAC devote some of their lobbying resources to that in the upcoming session. For any questions you got on that, I'm going to definitely step aside and handle those unless you have that question.
No, we've talked those two before quite extensively, so there's nothing new for me.
Yeah, nothing further than I would just ask that you approve, but I've got to be able to, one of the preconditions is I've just got to be able to show that you formally adopted or made a formal recommendation that these be submitted to KAC.
Well, I know Clancy and I had a conversation a week or so ago now about the first one. And I think given the circumstances that we're in is a prime example of why that's needed, to be able to facilitate things that we need to facilitate locally, and another local jurisdiction would need to do locally as well. So it's a prime example of why that should be considered and needs to be considered and taken care of. So that was kind of my argument on that.
Any comment?
No.
I don't have any comment on that. I know John said it all.
Wow.
We'd like to, probably a good idea to have this by motion.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the additions to the KAC legislative platform and requests from Riley County.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you.
I should give you credit for something.
Yeah. I'm gonna look outside. Is it January? Is that place below us freezing? Given
Next,
the,
gentleman, we have Craig at 10:30. Sorry, John.
oh, it's all right. Looking at some of the primary election returns to the Kansas legislature, of course, the entire legislature's up this year.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. It really, it could be an even more divided legislative session next year than it typically has been the last couple of years. We'll see. If you remember, I believe the entire Senate leadership is going to change.
Hadn't paid attention which political side's gaining more traction.
It looked like, at least in the primary round for the Republican side, that it probably turned it a little more conservative.
More conservative.
And there's going to be brand new by the board leadership through the Senate. Obviously, I don't know about the House side per se, but like I said, you still got to get through November too. So I mean, it's not a done deal any stretch, but.
See, Waxman kept his position.
Yeah, anybody else?
I was curious how that race would go since it
Yeah.
was with the current county clerk.
I didn't realize there was 3 people running for the county clerk over there.
2 in the office,
Yeah.
2 from within the office, and I think it's a 4-person. I know the family and the individual that's the 3rd person in the office besides the clerk that didn't run. She said, boy, that's not a fun environment.
No.
Name's Ashley. She's a really good young lady.
I know the North Central Kansas Regional Juvenile Detention Facility are concerned because as the county commissioners have been changing over the last few years. The changing commissioners, the new commissioners haven't been attending any of the meetings, so. It's a very expensive operation over there. Where Raleigh County is number 3 on the list in amount of money
Yeah,
used.
yeah. Well, maybe digital and virtual means maybe it'll help participation on that, because maybe
Might
it's
be
just,
important to have someone assigned to that.
People don't realize all the extra things or what's really entailed in not only county commission, but a lot of the offices they just run for because it's up for office,
Mhm.
or what really entailed, you know? That's unfortunate, because you would think
It is.
they would,
I think from my
they would be
perspective.
more informed and involved in that prior to.
From my perspective, 2 years ago, I pretty much had a good grasp of what it was going to take, with one exception, and that was how incredibly responsible and directed have to be with public health. And that was one that I was very much so behind the 8 ball on, and did try to work over last year and early this year to get caught up on that. And I'm considering the circumstances, I'm thankful that I did.
How you doing? All right.
Gentlemen,
Morning.
been using that loosely for a couple of nights. How's it going?
Good.
Very good. Sun pop out finally?
What's that?
Sun pop out finally?
Over here, and it's
not
it's pretty dark south of us.
It was sprinkling when I came in
Yeah.
this morning.
It hasn't made up its mind.
I'm here for my 10:30.
Got about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be patient.
Okay. You're a Royals fan, you have to be kind of patient, don't you?
Ouch.
You bet.
That's not a slam on Craig, that's a slam on the other
You know,
entity.
patience always pays off. I listened to the K-Man sports show in the afternoon. I hear the
The
last hour
game.
from 5 to 6,
Yeah,
you
the
know.
game.
One of the, I don't know which one it was, one of the fellas holds it against Alex Gordon, that he didn't drive in.
Thanks for coming in.
The tying run from third base in 2014, you know, and I go, gosh, you know, that just made the win the next year so
Yeah.
much better, so.
I don't think in that particular play, he would have made it to home anyway.
Yeah,
I think the result would have been the same.
yeah.
Then everybody would have questioned the decision to abstain.
My son always blames me for ruining his life, for making him a Kansas City Chiefs and Royals fan. So the last 5 years have paid off.
I was gonna say, what's he thinking about that now in
Yeah, no
hindsight?
doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah, but and for the Chiefs, it was a long drought too.
oh yeah, longer. That was
Remember the Todd Blackledge days?
Actually, that might have just been just a little bit before me.
I do.
Richard remember that, yeah.
He's a pretty good announcer, but wasn't a real good quarterback, that's for sure.
And the Chiefs, I think the Chiefs, it was their #1 pick that
It
year.
was.
Yeah, who did we not take that we could have taken?
Well,
I think it was
yeah.
Marino or Elway.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were all the same, weren't they?
That class of 83, yeah.
You know what's interesting about Elway, remember, my recollection of Elway was that either Cleveland or Cincinnati picked him and drafted him, and he refused to
Baltimore.
sign with them.
It was
Was
Baltimore.
it Baltimore?
It was
He
Baltimore.
refused to sign with them, and then they traded him to Denver.
He threatened to go ahead and go and play baseball instead because he was drafted there too.
I just remember he
Yeah.
refused to sign with the team that drafted him. You
Yeah.
didn't see that very
And
often.
I never understood that because actually the Broncos at the time were in worse shape than the Colts before they moved to Indy. I don't know. There must have been maybe an owner or personnel dispute
I
or
always,
something.
I always kind of held that against him most of his career.
Well,
And
Do you
then,
remember Eli Manning did the same thing too with the Chargers?
well,
Yeah.
but Peyton Manning, you know, I always admired him because as a junior at Tennessee, he could have jumped to the NFL, and he stayed with Tennessee hoping that he could win them a national championship the next year. They didn't.
Right.
But I just always admired.
But the irony was the following year they did after he was
Yeah,
done.
but I always
That's what happened,
I always
seriously.
admired his commitment,
Yeah.
you know, and so. So who's the quarterback for that team?
For which team?
Tennessee when they won it the next year.
He was a running, scrambling guy. I can't remember his name.
Hey, this is
That was the year K-State was supposed to play.
this is David. That quarterback was T. Martin.
There you go. He's an offensive coordinator now.
That was
Yep.
98.
T. Martin. Yeah, that was 98.
Yeah, in 98. Huh.
If we'd beaten Texas A&M, we would have played Tennessee for the national championship that year.
You know, we beat them in the Cotton Bowl one year.
A couple of years later,
2
yeah.
years later, yeah. I think it's close enough to 10:30 for me. You're still waiting?
It has to be close enough for the chair, though.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Just let me know.
We are live streamed now too, so we try to stay as
Go ahead.
close to the
go ahead.
agenda as we can.
Close enough.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
Good morning.
We have a little unusual item from our tax sale that hasn't happened before. We have an unsold property coming out of the tax auction. That's lot 91A in University Park. It has a street address of 11320 Lakeview Drive. The tax foreclosure statutes provide that if there is an unsold property out of a tax auction, there's any number of different ways the county can try to dispose of that property. We don't have to hold it to the next tax sale. We could, but we don't have to. Sometime after the tax auction, we got a call from the neighbor lady whose property adjoins this vacant lot. She heard from a neighbor out there that the property hadn't sold, and she was interested in seeing if she could buy it. One of the procedures authorized by the tax statutes is that I can file a motion that because this property was unsold, had been in the tax auction and was unsold, I can file a motion with the court to authorize the commissioners to enter into a private negotiation to see if we can sell this to them. And so I've attached to my car just the example of the motion that I would like to file. She wants to buy it, and so I think this private negotiation is the best way to go. I think we can get it done in a timely manner, and what I'll do is we'll negotiate with her and get a price, bring a contract back to the commission to see if you would agree to that price, and then we can try to get this property sold. So the presentation today is just to get a consensus from the board that I go ahead and proceed on getting authority from the court so we can negotiate privately with this person to sell this lot.
I'm fine, go ahead and get that done and get it back on tax roll.
Yep, I think so.
Okay.
Do we need a motion or consensus?
Consent.
And
They
it's-
both have equal value.
Yeah,
Consensus,
and
yeah.
it's, you know, we have the best success with these vacant lots out there if the adjoining neighbor buys it,
Yeah.
because they have some interest in doing that.
Yeah.
And she owns a lot next to it, and so I think we'll be able to get it sold to her, but I'll bring a contract back to you probably sometime next week.
Good,
Okay.
good. Okay, thank
That's
you,
all I
sir.
needed was just a
Thanks, Greg.
consensus.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next on 10:40, we have the Board of Health, Consider Order 16 work session.
Morning.
Can I get your name again?
Jeremy Platt.
That's what I was
We
thinking.
got to
But I
wait
just
for
wasn't 100% sure.
till 10:40.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's
That was just next up, but not.
right. If somebody out there may want to be viewing it, so we don't want to go ahead of the deal.
Can you tell how many people are watching?
I can't on this. I
No,
don't
we
know.
cannot.
City Commission, you can see that. When it, on Facebook. you can see
Yeah,
Yeah, they can see it out there, but we can't see it.
I think if you go to the actual YouTube channel,
Right.
you can see.
Mhm.
And speaking of, I want to pull that actual meeting back up before we start at 10:40. We can see who we're talking to.
Mary?
Mary's away from the,
Mary left.
yeah, well, she didn't, I think she stepped, wherever she went to here.
Hey, Mary? Yeah. John had a request.
Can you just pull up, or actually, I know exactly how to do it. I'm looking at the screen. There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, good. Oh, that's all you wanted?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were wanting, get on YouTube or something.
No. That's when we start having this conversation, we can actually,
Maybe participate.
right,
Gotcha.
to do what?
so we can actually talk to Julie, see Julie, and she can,
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, Julie, yeah. Okay, Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again, Commissioners. Clancy Holman, Riley County Council. I'll just make a very brief introduction, just so you know, and so the folks that want to talk have as much time as possible in the time allotted here. You have in front of you a card that contains Local Order 16. There was a request that members of the Aggieville Business Association, potentially downtown Manhattan, wanted to come in and talk about Order 16. That's why it's on here today. And attached as a second document behind that order is an explanatory statement from Julie Gibbs, our local health officer and health department administrator. And so unless Julie has anything she wanted to say at the beginning, I'll turn the time over to those who want to speak.
Do you have anything, Julie?
No, not right now.
Okay, so who wanted to speak to them? Okay. Name and whatever.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Platt. Thank you for allowing us the time to be here today. I'm appearing, I'm a local attorney here in town, but I'm not appearing on behalf of any client. I'm just appearing here as a concerned citizen in Riley County, to be quite honest with you. I will tell you that I've talked to a number of business owners, a number of individuals, both in the Aggieville Business District and the Downtown Business District. Some of those businesses, some of those individuals are past clients of mine, but I try to keep in contact with people in Riley County when things like this occur, because I look at ordinance number 16 and I can kind of give some thoughts to people about what I think about the ordinance and from a legal perspective. Two issues that I want to raise here today. One, in relation to ordinance number 16, the businesses in town and the effect that this ordinance is having on the businesses here in town. And then the second is that, in my view, ordinance number 16 is going to result in unnecessary lawsuits against the county. From a business perspective, like I said, I've spoken to a number of owners in downtown and in Aggieville. And the thing that I keep hearing is, look, there was a set of regulations that was put in place and we were all following that. And then ordinance number 16 comes out and moves the goalposts without any numbers to back up the reasons for why we're now doing this, other than, well, we're concerned about what may happen when the students come back. Last week, I was here on Thursday morning to request this meeting. And after that meeting, I was made aware that the health director sent out an email to a couple of different places indicating that they were looking at amending part of the order number 16, but that wouldn't happen until next week, or which would be this week. It discussed counter services at fast food restaurants being permitted and seating at bars being permitted, and that RCPD was told not to enforce that portion of the order. And that so long as customers were 6 feet apart and they're seated, dining at bar tops is allowed. That's not what ordinance number 16 said. And to me, that email went to a couple of different locations, but not everywhere. And there were a number of businesses that weren't aware that RCPD had apparently been advised not to enforce that portion of the order. Not everyone knew about it. I don't know who gave the authority to RCPD not to enforce a regulation. And then today, I was made aware of a letter that came out again from the Riley County Health Department Administrator that indicates that order number 16 is fine in their view and that nothing will be amended. So we're back to, okay, now what is RCPD being told about how to enforce this, this order? Businesses here in town cannot continue to operate under these restrictions and are going to shut down. You know, I've talked to a couple of different business owners about this application process for an event with 50 or more people up to 2,000. Planning cannot be done. You cannot plan to host an event if you don't know if you're going to get approval to host this event. The conference center over here is having problems planning things. There's, you know, at least one individual I've spoken to in Aggieville that's trying to plan concerts, outdoor concerts perhaps, doesn't know how to plan those things because isn't aware whether they're going to be able to get a permit to do so. I understand that the health director's job is not to look at this from a business perspective, but your job as, you know, the county health board is to at least take into consideration, you know, the effects that these orders are having on the businesses here in town. In terms of the legal issues, like I said, in my view, order number 16 is going to result in lawsuits against this county. It's going to cost money in legal fees that isn't coming in because we have a decrease in the tax base and the tax numbers that are coming in. I was just made aware this morning of a letter from the Kansas Justice Institute that was sent to Mr. Holman, I believe earlier this week, that outlines one of the ways that this order is unconstitutional. And that letter discusses the taking and keeping of employee records and then turning those over to other authorities within the county. I haven't had a whole lot of time to digest this letter, but that is just one more way that I see lawsuits arising out of this order. My big problem with order number 16 is the application process for events over 50 people. There is no clear guidance within the order or within the application process of what is required in order to obtain a permit. The people making the decisions on approval of applications is done in secret. I've been made aware now of who the individuals are that are making that decision. And I appreciate that there's one person on that 4-person committee that maybe has some of our businesses in mind when she's thinking about those things, but the other 3 don't have a business background and are not making those decisions based upon business requirements. Thirdly, there's no appeals process for a denial of an application, and that violates the due process of the individuals requesting those applications. I wasn't aware after reading order number 16, the last Thursday, Ms. Gibbs made the statement that those applications, when they come in and the information when an application is given to an individual, that information is being turned over to the Riley County Police Department. And I have a huge problem with that. Let's talk about the requirements to obtain the permit. Again, there's nothing listed in the order as to what is required. There should be a list of criteria required to hold an event up to 2,000 people. And if an individual meets the criteria, then they can host the event. There's already regulations in play for social distancing, for mask requirements, for things like that. And if an individual violates those regulations while they're hosting an event, they can be cited. There's already a procedure in effect to cite those people. I was made aware of one applicant who was initially denied an application because, and the reason that he was given was the committee didn't feel like it was a good event. He was ultimately given that permit, But a county can't deny a permit just because the application committee doesn't feel like it's a good thing. And my question is, what's going to happen a month from now when the university and the athletics department comes in to the director and says, we need an exemption because we want to put people in that football stadium? How do you think that's going to go over for applicants who have been denied an application to host an event with 55 people? That's going to create more litigation for those people when the university gets an exemption from hosting more than 2,000 people. If an individual is denied, there's no appeals process. It's a violation of due process to have government arbitrarily decide on an application with no clear criteria and that the decision-making committee having the final say. There's nothing listed in this ordinance about what do I do if my permit gets denied. Then we deal with the information being provided to the Riley County Police Department. Requiring individuals to provide information about a private gathering and then providing that information to the police. That's a clear violation of the Constitution in my view. If I'm hosting a reception for 55 people, I don't want the Riley County Police Department knowing that I'm hosting an event at a private location. It's none of their business. If gatherings are going to be permitted, they should be permitted under the guidelines of safely doing so. If those guidelines or regulations are violated, the individuals who are hosting those events should be cited. But to require those individuals to apply for a permit and providing the information to the police creates huge problems for this county. I am here today asking that the county health board revoke order number 16, which you have the authority to do under KSA 65201B, and just go back to the drawing board. I don't have a problem if there's an ordinance in effect, if there's an order in effect. But let's make something that passes constitutional muster. There should be I don't believe there should be an application process. If the county's going to say, look, we're going to let events up to 2,000 people happen, then let events up to 2,000 people happen with the procedures that are already in place. But if there is an application process, there needs to be a very specific set of criteria. And if the person who's applying for the permit meets that criteria, then they're given the application. And none of that information should be turned over to the Riley County Police Department. I appreciate you letting me speak here today.
I think one more thing before we go, we need to go recess into the Board of Health, shouldn't we?
You can.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have to.
They don't have to. Okay, that's fine. So,
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
you got a question?
No, I have comments, but not right now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you're saying the same thing he is?
Well, I'm a local business owner.
I understand. I mean, you come up here, but he said a lot.
Yes.
So if we're gonna say something similar to keep in time here, that you limit your time.
No, I can be quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
He'll give you about 3 minutes here. Then can you do
That's
that?
fine.
Okay.
My name is Ryan Brenhall. I'm a local business owner here in town. I was born and raised here. I've owned local businesses here for 20 years. The way this ordinance is, I'll be lucky if I last another month, honestly. I've never been in a situation to where I can't adjust anything. This weekend alone, I had cops coming in regulating on what I can and can't do. And I never thought I'd see this in America. This is crazy. Telling us we can't dance. I had an officer when I was leaving the bar, I think it was 12:20, crouched down behind a vehicle with his camera on, trying to figure out what was going on in there to make sure we're closing. When I asked him, he said, "Are those all employees?" Two of them were two people waiting for a ride home. That's all. We had to make them go outside. But he stayed there, but this is just crazy on some of this stuff. Happens nowhere else. I do know for a fact there was a wedding party in town, or it was right outside, 250 people. Saturday night, they had a DJ, they had dancing, everything. Nothing was said. There's a lot of us in town that are, we've put up with it. We understand we know this virus is dangerous, but we still have to make a living. And we're gonna put a lot of people out of business if we don't get any control of this. I have 2 young kids. I really feel like this is targeted just to the bars and restaurants only. I mean, the grocery stores, a lot of those places see more people in one day than what I see in a month. On top of that, last month alone, I did what I do in one weekend for the whole month. That absolutely does not pay any bills. It's not just, financial, everybody throws it back to we're being greedy. We're not being greedy. This is our livelihood. A lot of us. I mean, we could have had the whole room full of people, but we figured it wouldn't be a good idea. Just these circumstances we're under. So that's all I really have to say, but I really hope you guys help keep us local businesses alive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nobody else. Okay. Comments?
The whole smear is disconcerting to me. It's the way it's getting, apparently it looks like it's out of hand or something. We have a letter from the president of the university and trying to dictate what the health department and the health board we do in Raleigh County, rural Raleigh County. We make decisions we try to base them on fact, and the fact that the city passed an ordinance on masks about withholding students and things. So why would I want to turn around and allow them to have an event at the KSU Stadium? It ought to be equal to everyone. Number 2 is even the governor's order back. I complained originally on the original governor's order. What kind of vaccine or what do the legislators receive that exempts them from having to wear a mask? That's the number 1 exemption in the state of Kansas. All legislators are exempt from wearing a mask. And so this, I agree with you, Jeremy, that I hadn't thought about everything through as far as there are no set of guidelines to fill out the application. When I talked to the one business owner, it took a second round to get approval. And so I can understand what the business owners are going through. And at this point right now, I'm not comfortable with order number 16. I think we need to sit down with our health department director and think this thing through a little bit more and detail everything, because once again, I bring up the university. I'm sure at some point they're going to want to put people in the football stadium. Looking at their employee count, that'd take up most of the 2,000, I would think. I don't know. I haven't attended a game up there personally for a few years, but we can't be making exemptions for one organization over all the other businesses. So I think we need to revisit order number 16.
Do you have any comments, John?
I guess the only one concern that I have particularly, and I know I've talked to Julie about getting a business dynamic in place as these are being looked at, as these are being talked about, and as they're being developed, to see what the best approach is, because honestly, I see this over the next 6, potentially 8 weeks being a real problem. And how we go about that is going to be the difference between moving forward and seeing light at the end of the tunnel or a whole bunch of businesses closing. So, whatever direction that we go and whatever push forward that we make, that needs to be included in the process in advance, so that when we do have these orders, everybody knows where they're at. There's consistency built into the equation. Some of those other things that you discussed are also incorporated into that equation, and everybody can feel at least comfortable, because I don't see this going away soon.
No.
We're going to be dealing with this for quite some time, and there will need some restrictions in place to cover the safety and the security in, because if we don't let that one get out of control, we're going to be even worse shape than we are currently. So it's very, very important to try to figure out a way to balance those 2 entities that are hard to balance to begin with, and come up with a way to be able to accomplish that in a manner that's going to, 1, keep us safe and secure, and 2, provide functionality and operation and the ability to move forward for all businesses, not just one sector, not just one spot. And I think that's going to be our best approach, both where we stand and as we move forward. I know that there's been some talk about an order number 17, so I know there's some dialogue in place with that. I mean, that is the best approach. You sit down and figure out how we need to incorporate that moving forward. Maybe not rescind 16 just yet, but develop a 17 that's efficient and effective for not just the short term, but for a longer term while we try to navigate through the rest of this pandemic. And that's been kind of my thought since I've talked to several other business owners and some of the business owners throughout the city and throughout the county, and conversations with other members. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And I would just add too, we're already following CDC's recommendations on the social distancing, not members of the same household, proper hand hygiene, washing your hands, wearing a mask mandated in Manhattan is an ordinance. So we're already following, I think, even the federal guidelines. So right now, I think let's revisit order number 16, and we need to sit down and do some serious consideration on the ramifications for everybody, including business.
Yeah. Okay. And let me throw in some comments. I appreciate, Jeremy, everything you're saying. As a business owner at one time, and my business went south, not because of that, but I understand the frustration when someone's getting here and can't pay the bills. And you have the whole thing on it. That's in 06, I went out of business. I'm still paying on that because I felt that not to go bankrupt, not to put the loan on somebody else's thing. And I understand it hit me hard. And I don't think that the cure for the pandemic should be worse than the pandemic, because that is not. And you can't, we're suffering for lack of sales tax money, but then you can't operate. So how are you going to get the sales tax money? Okay. And I really feel that that's a problem. I go along with the fact we need to relook at this thing on it so that we can move on. I've been watching that and seeing, and so I had some questions on it. I've consulted our county counselor on it to see what we can do. So, but this one here, I'm not sure how we can get here and just rescind the order and for a moment or two, everything is out. I think we have to maintain some sort of civility here, but I would accept any motion from either of the commissioners for us to do something right now. And so I would be asking.
I don't know that there is anything we can do right now until we have something that's draftable for 17.
So, yes, sir.
Might be a good point to ask.
Okay, yeah, Julie, what are your comments?
In commenting on looking at an order 17 draft, or just
But just some comments on what you heard.
Yeah. So regarding what Mr. Platt mentioned with order number 16, we did mention part of it is prevention, but a huge part of it is in response to the data that we received from contact tracing. At the time that we were drafting order 16, we had about 27% of our total positives coming from restaurant bars employees, or stemming back to specifically the Aggieville businesses or Aggieville restaurants and bars. As far as targeting restaurants and bars, we're actually looking at the behavior that goes along with that, high risk behavior that goes along with being in a bar, and that's specifically why we looked at just staying seated instead of congregating, standing around a bar, congregating around a bar, or on the dance floors. So we were specifically looking at that behavior. We do know that CDC and KDHE both deem, they both put bars in that high risk category. And so with all of those things in mind, with the data that we're seeing, that's exactly why we did that. So we did have data that was backing that. As far as the application process, there is criteria within that application, within the request. So they do have to answer certain questions. The committee that we formed was based on discussions with the recovery task force and also with the clinical task force. So that committee, we believe, is a good representation from our the healthcare good representation from healthcare and also from the chamber and from individuals who have experience with planning events. And that's why we chose those individuals. Also, they were willing to serve on that committee. And they do ask questions from those organizers about their application. If something doesn't look quite right, or if they have further questions, they ask questions about it. But as far as I know, they've not responded as, they just don't feel like this is a good event. I don't see that coming from our committee, and actually I review those. As far as giving that information to the RCPD, that's not happening. Those we can share information with the EOC as we always have, but that is not going to RCPD. So that's my response and in reasoning why we had some of those items in place for order number 16. But I'm certainly up for looking at a draft for order number 17.
Clancy?
Just for a second, Julie, could you describe for anybody who's listening out there, perhaps on YouTube, I don't want the impression to be created that you simply sit down at your desk and then dash one of these things off. Talk a little bit about the process that created Order 16, if you will.
Yep. So all of this happens within the command staff, the EOC. So we do sit down and look at the data that we have that drives all of our decisions. We also have many conversations with our region. So we have EOC briefings every Monday, and that includes individuals from the health departments at Pottawatomie County and Geary County, as well as Fort Riley, K-State. So all of those individuals we discuss information with. We also get feedback in data from our clinical task force, also from the recovery task force. So yeah, I don't sit at my desk and just come up with all of this. I take all of those things into consideration.
I may ask one question here, Julie. Is there any issue from your perspective or potentially from the EOC perspective of adding that business component to the discussions and the development of these drafts moving forward? Because you've mentioned the other ones, but there really isn't that component that kind of drives that part of the discussion.
Sure, yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay.
Think other questions? What do you want to do now?
Well, I believe we're going to have a future discussion of some sort on several other things. So we really have that. I don't know what we can really do.
Yeah, it's something we need to get on right away, because once, as these students are filling in, we can get a flare up, we can wind up shutting things down. It's hard to tell. We can't predict the future, but right now, this isn't going to work the way it is right now.
No.
So Monday or at some point, we need to get on it right away so the business people know exactly what they can fill out and can't fill out, and so we need to address it quickly. And Monday would be a good day to do that.
Okay. Clancy, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, you can always do that. You are the Board of Health, as pointed out, and certainly, Julie, are you available Monday to come down and talk about that with the board?
Yes.
Be here, not on virtual, be here.
Yep.
Okay.
No, so that's where we are right at the moment. For me,
Needs to be thorough.
Yeah.
When we have that discussion.
And I
To thoroughly look
understand
at all these components moving forward and put something in place that works not just for 7 days, 14 days, it works for the longer term as well, because we're going to be in this for a while.
Okay. That's it on that. Thank you for your comments.
gentlemen.
Appreciate it, and perhaps we can get this working.
okay, I had something come up quickly, so on the last item
Yeah.
there, well, I think you handled it.
Go ahead. Let me sign your time card.
What's that?
Sign your time card.
No.
11:10, gentlemen, we have money.
Okay.
Hi, Sherry.
Hello.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
We're doing good.
And good.
Natalia Lauser, NATALYALOWTHER.
Thank you. Take your name, ma'am, so everyone knows who you are.
Joyce Troyer.
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, Monty.
Okay, good morning again. First thing I would ask you to do is to take this matter from the table so that we can conduct a public hearing.
The public hearing?
Well, I think you need to vote to take it from the table.
Yeah,
correct?
okay.
Yeah, get a motion on that.
I'm going to move that we untable our past discussion on a public hearing to rename a private room.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so just a reminder, this is a public hearing. It's been advertised. We tabled it to this, well, we tabled it indefinitely, but then we notified everyone that we're going to reconvene it today. You have all the background information. I'll go to that. I think what I'm going to do is go to the map. See.
I think you may have to go down just a little bit.
We have to go down a ways.
Yeah.
Whoops.
There you go. Getting closer.
That's still emergency.
It's right after this.
There we go. Oh, we're just gonna go to the map. I think that's probably the most efficient for discussion purposes. So to summarize the situation, the NG 911 committee and the property owners are all in agreement with the name Anderson Lane. Where we have disagreement is the NG 911 committee recommends that we renumber because it's a directional change and that is consistent with our policy and approach on all of their other renamings. The property owners would prefer that they keep their numbers. We have submitted information in your packet regarding all the reasons that we would recommend keeping or changing the numbers, as well as you have information from the property owners regarding their position. So with that, I think I'll just turn it back to you to open the public hearing, listen to both sides, and decide what you want to do. Any questions?
Don't at this time, so we're not open. Do you want to make a motion? Okay.
Don't need a motion. You
Yeah,
just-
we
Okay,
said
no,
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 okay.
public hearing. Do I have anyone to speak? Okay.
I might hand out something to you gentlemen. My name is Mark Weddle. I'm one of the property owners, and I am in agreement with all the other property owners that we would prefer to keep our number. We understand and appreciate the county's interest in safety, and by all means, I want to be supportive of that. So this shouldn't be antagonistic. However, I am the second shortest duration property owner. I've been there 22 years. The youngest one is 10 years. The rest have been there much longer. We anticipate very few changes in our neighborhood anytime soon. We have some heritage with respect to our numbers. I know it doesn't seem of significance to a lot of people, but we would like to keep them, and we think that we can accommodate the interests of the county in this manner. We've talked with Bart Thomas signs, and he has suggested to sign something like this. We would be happy to even pay for it, put at our corner, identifying the lane. We do know that there was an issue at one time identifying where the road was, but this will now be named, and there will be a street sign. It'll say Anderson Lane. The question in our mind is why we need to change the numbers. And what we have proposed is something that's very prominently displayed, that would show how far it is to each one. We would put similar matching kinds of address labels at each driveway. And we would simply say, and you know, it's interesting, as I was listening to your previous discussion, I appreciate the difficulty that you gentlemen are in these days. We're trying to resolve what's the role of the government and safety and so forth. And yet what's the role in some personal preference? And we would simply say to you, we see no compelling argument why these numbers couldn't be retained. There's only 4 of us on the lane. It's very unlikely to be developed. And we have, and you're going to hear from some others, we have agreed in principle, and we'll do so formally, that if we need, if there's ever a subdivision or anything like that, we'd be happy to be subject to renumbering at that time. It's very unlikely given the nature of the property. And we're saying, look, once we find Anderson Lane, you find these prominent signs, you see the signs right in front of each person's driveway, there should be no issue at all with regard to safety. So we're simply saying to you, look, we would very much prefer to keep our numbers. We see no compelling argument why this is going to make it difficult for any emergency vehicle to find us. And you can see there's no true north and south to the whole thing anyway. So with respect, so we really are the 5500 block west in terms of its east-west direction. And then after that, it gets pretty squirrely. So we're simply saying, is there any reason why we couldn't keep these numbers prominently displayed for you and stay in compliance with the proper interests of the county? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the way they were looking at it was planning is always saying, we know we're not going to be crowded now, but what's going to happen 50 years from now when they're going to redo numbers and these things happen.
Respectfully, sir, I think that is something that, you know, we've addressed.
Yeah.
And we've said, you know, if it comes to that, sure. But at this point, really, first of all, as I understand, there's some kind of limitations with respect to how much you can subdivide anyway. There's some practical matters. As a private lane, it's not a public road anyway.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is that if we came to that, you know, we understand that kind of thing happens. But honestly, this to me seems like another place where we're prone to a little bit of bureaucratic overreach. We don't necessarily need to do that to accomplish the justifiable goals of safety. So we're simply saying, my guess is nobody's going to be moved the next 20, 30 years. Is it really important that we renumber? And we would argue that it is not.
And I think when they did that, they were looking at, because I see from 25 on up, there's a wide range of variables in it, and your numbering right now is not that wide in that mile area.
Well, it'd be pretty hard to get anything between the 5,500 and 5,504 because there's essentially 100 feet difference in the driveway. The next one is farther up, but if you would see the terrain, you'd see that they're not going to be like a condo in there. And so, and then farther up, you know, it's just, again,
the availability of sewer is also limited to that.
Well, there is none. I mean,
that's what I meant.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
I meant.
We don't even have internet. I mean, we have, we got fireplaces and stuff. We keep warm in the winter, but it's pretty rudimentary living. And again, I think we've gone the extra mile to accommodate those kinds of interests. We understand that if in some fashion at some point that all changes, we'd have to deal with that. But on the other hand, is it really important to deal with that on a what-if basis on something that's so very unlikely? You got a lot of more pressing things that you really do have to deal with. This one's very unlikely.
What do you think, John?
Is putting this proper signage up there something that would kind of create a necessary balance, Monty, in your opinion? Yeah. I'm talking to Monty. Sorry, he's right behind us.
He's coming around.
He's coming up to the podium.
Okay. Am I supposed to get out of the way?
Yeah, it's okay. We're trying to keep everything socially distanced, of course.
Well, let's see. Do we have? I think we have a map of what what we're proposing to go to. And also, how do we get the Zoom thing back? I mean, we have.
Go down to the
we have
bottom where it says
emergency
Zoom meeting,
responders
right there.
here,
Yeah.
so, I mean, how do we get both up at the same time? Can we? We can't
They can
have the
speak
map and
now.
also
They
see.
can speak now.
Yeah, they can
They
still
can hear
speak.
you.
We just
They
can't
can
see
speak,
them.
we just won't be able to see them.
Right.
Do you want to screen share it, Monty? So they can see it, like Pat can see it?
Well, probably.
Okay, do you want to just find
But I'm
the
trying
page
to,
you want?
is that the only map we have in here? I guess. Don't we have a map? of
That's
it?
the only one that I seen when I went through the packet, unless I missed something, and it's possible.
I thought we had a map of
Okay.
the proposed. That
Yeah,
was
this
like
one.
that was-
It was on there.
I mean, I
They're both on the
They're
same.
both on
map.
there?
The current and the proposed one.
I just went by it or something.
No, it was up on the screen when you moved it.
Yeah, keep going backwards.
It had
Oh,
both.
okay. It was a
Yeah,
combined
both.
map.
Yeah.
I just saw currents.
No, it's got both.
I got you.
There we go.
Yeah, right back where we started.
Okay. All right, well, you want to do that? That's up to you. You want to be able to see who's speaking, but we have a lot of emergency responders on Zoom that would like to comment too, so. I mean, we need to hear from everybody before we start talking about.
Well, that's actually up to the chair.
So
Who's
So Dave Adams.
Let me
Pat
address
Collins
the
are-
future development issue. I don't think that's a major concern. That's not
Yeah.
really why we would want to change the numbering system. The primary reason is Anderson Avenue has got its numbering scheme. It's
Right.
traveling in a certain direction.
Right.
We're now going in a different direction. And for response purposes, it makes sense to renumber that now so that
Well,
that's associated with that. And so we can find people
okay.
easier.
I,
And
I,
that's consistent with what we've done in the past,
I understand.
and it's worked.
I understand. But that's Anderson Lane, not Anderson Avenue.
No, Anderson Avenue this is numbered now off of Anderson Avenue.
Yeah.
And that has its whole number.
But wouldn't you
This
confuse
is a
that?
different direction,
But
so.
wouldn't, if you're saying it's numbered as Anderson Avenue, wouldn't you confuse that and try to find Anderson Avenue down here if they didn't have the thing of LN on it when you go and look for it? Because
What I'm
and that's
trying to
what I'm
say is
looking
this
for.
Anderson Lane is a totally
Right,
different
I
direction.
understand.
It's not on the same numbering grid, and we don't want it to be on the same numbering grid because it's a different directional street. And for emergency
Well,
response purposes, it's better to have.
But if it's
the
on a
new
different directional street, that shouldn't bother that. I mean, on it.
Well,
Unless, and they're gonna
yeah.
have signs. I mean, if you
I'm
put
gonna let
signs
all
up.
the emergency responders, speak
Okay,
to
where are they
because
at?
The critical issue is, can we find people or not?
Okay,
I'm gonna
yes,
leave it
sir.
at that.
Just for clarification, Monty, I'm trying to understand, and I'm not sure Marvin's understanding exactly what you're saying. Tell me if this is correct or not. One of the reasons you're proposing the numbering change is because the current numbering system coincides too closely with Anderson
Right.
Avenue.
Well, they're all numbered off of the Anderson Avenue grid.
So
and
that's
not
the
off of a-
concern,
Well,
off the
from
north.
their
And
standpoint
I-
in emergency services.
I guess from my standpoint is you're also, I mean, I could understand if you had a subdivision or a large amount of homes in this particular area density wise, but it is only 4 addresses.
And to me, it's a different street.
But I respond to that.
Well, you might want to let you had time, might want to let
Okay.
them lose.
Yes,
Who-
Sherry has comments, emergency responders have
Okay.
comments.
Okay, who's online for, Dave, are you still there?
I saw Pat Collins was on.
Pat, are you there?
Pat and Dave are both on there.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm on here.
Okay, what is your comment?
Well,
Can you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you very well.
the big part is consistency across the county. That's where I'm coming from, because we bring responders in from all over the place, and I'm not going to speak for Dave, but he brings a new EMT in. We have fire personnel that are new to the area. We have police officers that aren't familiar with the area. So as we build roads, and an east, this would be the as we go up this road, normally the addresses would, the even addresses would all be on the right side of the road, the odd addresses on the left side. These are all even on the opposite side of the road. I don't see where we would add a 5500 Anderson Avenue. Doesn't look like there's space for adding these 4 or 5 addresses, but normally each address is about 6.5 feet per road. So as we go up to the roads across the county, we get a number of roads per mile, a number of addresses per mile, and we're squeezing it looks like 14 addresses, something like that, into this range. Not that it'll affect us today, I personally have had a problem finding addresses on this private road. Not when it's on fire, but for a medical call. But I think signage would improve that. I guess I am opposed to leaving the addresses the same, but if there was a caveat in there that said the first new address, and if the commission wanted to leave it the way it was, and the first new address that comes up, something else gets addressed and another building gets added to this, that would create a new address, would change the addressing scheme for the whole roadway. I mean, that's the only way that I guess I could be swayed to agree to that. That's all I've really got.
That's just from my perspective. We're talking with 4
The other one,
addresses.
what she didn't, I didn't realize or remember, that the odds and evens are always on one side of the street or the other.
Evens are always on the north
Yeah.
and east, and odds are always on the west and the south.
Okay.
So because they're addressed off of Anderson and they're on the north side of Anderson, they're all evens.
Yeah,
But with the new Anderson Lane, they're all on the west side, so they should be odd.
They're on the north side, and it's diagonal.
Yeah,
Which is
and
north and which is.
the only
does it
thing-
go north or south? No, it's diagonal, so they're
The-
all north of Anderson.
if it was a different name other than Anderson Lane, I would understand. And I know they're confusing this that way. I think everyone's gonna, because I look at it, the difference between lane and avenue is a different street.
But one is current, you're proposing to change that to the other.
Right.
So the road, both technically the same. There's not 2 different roads here. It's currently Anderson Avenue. They're wanting to change it with the numbers to Anderson Lane. It's the same road.
Sir, we don't have a name. We're not on it.
They don't
Oh,
have any-
okay.
then that's what I'm trying to say. It's a
We're a
different
dirt
road.
road. We're
It's
just-
a private.
It's a
way,
private road.
Privately owned.
So we would take a name. But could I just?
Come on up here.
This is,
I understand what it's saying. It's a private road. You can't,
Yeah, because it's a new road,
Mhm.
our argument would be that when they find Anderson Lane, they found us. It almost makes no difference what the numbers are. They'll be prominently
yeah.
displayed. And there is no other Anderson Lane, so the numbering north and south means little or nothing. There are four residences, all prominently located on a separate road. So there's not now, and I think that might be helpful. Now that we understand it's not the same road as Anderson
that's what I'm
Avenue.
saying.
We've got a whole new road. The only place on the planet it's gonna be is that distance. And therefore, the numbering is almost inconsequential, particularly if we do our job to help, make it visually. The problem in the past, as long as they can find the lane, they're gonna find us. And I think you have, the county would naturally have a sign, I assume, that says, and I would say this, if we, somewhere in the world, there's a 5500 West something that meets 5500 Street. Or, you know,
Yeah,
and so you can have a
understand.
5,500 go north and south and a 5,500 going east and west.
Thank you, Alexander Hamilton, for that one.
Yeah.
We wouldn't give them the same, that close of a name if that was the scenario.
Well, in New York today, you can go to Fifth Avenue and Fifth Street. And somewhere there's an address that's pretty similar. I'm just saying, there's only 4 of us, folks. We've agreed that if there's, you know, if anybody puts up a lawnmower shed, we'll let you change our numbers.
Yeah.
But if we could keep it until there's such change, we feel like we can meet your needs.
Commissioner Rodriguez, this is Kevin Hauser, ITGS Director. Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I guess I would just want to remind the commission that we've had a committee renaming private drives. And, you know, we basically start making variances for small things like this. Where does that end? I think we've been consistent to date, and I would argue that we remain consistent. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Commissioner Rodriguez, this is David Adams, and I would echo what Chief Collins said. But I also think we do need to take into consideration that if we start making variances here, where is it going to end? And that is something we have to look at for today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and down the road.
Any comment? I mean, they're telling me, you know, because they do this all the time, and everywhere we have to make changes
We're asking
on
for
private
deferral.
roads, you know.
We're asking for a deferral. I know we may be the only people who cared enough to really put something in.
I understand.
I would be more apt to make that change if we had a significant amount of property there. But we are doing this with just 4 properties.
Mhm.
I know it's somewhat of a variance, but you're also putting signage up there that donates that this property's here, this property's here, this property's here. This property's here, it's a little further back, but it's still here. I mean, like I said, if you had a subdivision, a park, however you want to determine that, that may be a little different at this point in time, but that would be, we're just talking about 4 properties. Go ahead.
So I do the addressing, and I'm also the next gen representative for Riley County for the state of Kansas. And so I have to submit all of our address points to the state every month.
Okay.
So when we defer from the state grid, then every month when I make a submission, if something's out of whack, I have to
So this would be
verify
out of whack.
that's why. And if we do it for this one, and then the next person comes in, wants to do it, how can you tell them
That's-
no? And before you know it, we don't comply with what the state is trying to do by making everything standardized, and that's just
Now, the
why.
standardization would be the size, what, odd or even, or,
The standardization is that you're following a set grid, which we have, and we have had.
okay, but the grid here, you were talking about, the odd is always on the north.
The odds are always on the west and south, and the evens are always on the north and east. And so Anderson's considered an east-west road because it mainly goes
Okay,
east-west.
right,
And so when you cross that with another road, you can't have 2 east-west
Right,
roads
okay,
touch each other.
okay.
So then the grid that crosses it then becomes a north-south.
okay.
Whether the road's, you know, straight north-south.
So
or-
it becomes a north-south, so you're saying the even should be on the east side?
East, and it's a whole different numbering system.
Yeah.
There's a grid from a 0 point. in the
No, I
city.
remember that when I was doing zoning and planning for Ogden,
Yeah,
when we got something that was it was within the city, but out of the actual, whatever, anyway, part of the city limits, that you did that. And I could understand that, so, okay.
we've renamed several other private roads, and we've had the same request. People want to keep their number, and we've told them no up until now.
Okay, just a minute, sir. You had something.
Yes, I just wanted to caution you about making a decision based on an agreement to put up signage, to do this and that. We've had other people propose those things in the past. And what we looked at is how do we make sure that they follow through with that? The next owner, can change, the signage falls into disrepair. We have no way
I
of
understand.
enforcing that and making sure that that happens. And what sort of agreement would we have? How would we enforce that, here's the next address, how do we make sure they all change?
On a private road.
Well, I mean, there's
Yeah.
just no practical way of
Okay.
really enforcing that into the future.
Let me,
We've looked at that.
Why don't you come on up and
Let me address east, west, and north, south streets. College Heights is an east-west street as is Anderson Avenue. They meet right by College Heights Avenue or Church. They're both numbered east and west. There's little, it's not a straight street. So those two touch and they're both east-west streets. So that does occur. And if you look at this thing is much more east and west than it is north and south. With respect to the signs, I would simply ask the commission, give us 10 days. Bart Thomas has it ready to go. We'll put it up. If you want us to put some money in escrow for repair, I'll do that. If you want us to sign something that says the first time it falls in disrepair, you change our numbers, we'll do that. If you want to say that the first time that somebody else comes and wants an exception, you're now faced with an exception dilemma and you want out of it, we'll change it then. What I'm saying to you is this is an opportunity for a government agency to show some flexibility with respect to the citizens' requests that in my mind is no way out of line. And we can deal with these issues. Nothing you do here today is guaranteed to last for 100 years without a problem. But you've got legacy people living in these residences who are absolutely willing to work with the county with respect to any of your restrictions, requirements that you might have for us. And to say that, no, this is our policy, we can't vary, I think is inflexible. And that's not why I live in Kansas. So we respectfully would say, if you will give us your requirements that protect your legitimate needs, we'll meet them. And you'll be able to see the sign up there in 10 days. And if it's not adequate, you tell us what you need. We brought you a sample. I think what it does here, I could have brought a big one, but Bart advised me that didn't need to do it. He said, just show them this and use this as an example. You may think of something that would be preferable, but what we've done here is we've shown you, a way to indicate clearly where these residences are. And, with respect to the north-south thing, I think that's kind of if it was clearly north and south, that'd be one thing, even an odd thing. I think that the reality of it is these are prominently located residences. Once you drive by my house, you know exactly there's a house there. You're not thinking east-west or is it left, because on the right side, there's nothing but trees. So finding this is not a problem. We think we can be compliant with your legitimate needs. And we're offering, gentlemen, to do what you require of us to make it work.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Could you come on?
Oh, yeah, state your name, please.
Natalia Wilder. And I've written a lot of the correspondence on behalf of the neighbors. I'm Tona Montemani's daughter, 5514 Anderson Lane. My parents are both in their late 80s, and so I assist them a lot. I want to comment on two topics. One is potential scenarios based on actual experiences in my life where life and property could be endangered by a random change of address. And then I also want to address some actual problems I've experienced with an address change situation in another county. Because this is bigger than 911. 911 is vital to life, but between 911 needs, there is a lot of other needs in our lives. There are some scenarios that these are based in actual experience that I really don't want to experience. One is someone is unable to give 911 the correct street number because it's changed, and therefore emergency personnel can't find them in a timely manner. In a situation of panic, dementia, or physical shock, someone might revert to the old street numbers. Or worse, know that the old ones are wrong, not remember the right one, and therefore not be able to give any number. I do maintenance on my parents' 20 acres. It's heavily wooded, very rough terrain. This can involve working alone in the woods with a chainsaw, moving heavy objects with levers, or operating machinery such as riding mowers and skid steer loaders. I'm pretty sure I couldn't remember a new street number when I'm bleeding out or pinned under a rock or log. I'm just not good at remembering numbers in the best of circumstances. An EMT friend of mine says this is a known phenomenon, even with long-time addresses. In situations of stress, calling 911, people can't remember how to give instructions to their house. And if it's a different number, I'm not going to remember it. Another scenario, someone is suffering from temporary delirium due to prescription side effects or to dementia. Healthcare personnel attempt to assess cognitive function by asking the person's address, and they can't give it correctly because they don't remember the new address due to the change. Someone is assumed to be disoriented internally rather than by an administrative change. Another scenario, someone is trying to respond to account security questions on the phone or online and can't remember what street address is linked to the account to ask security questions, such as what is the mailing address on the account? Therefore, someone is locked out of an essential financial, communication, utility, or other service for an extended period of time until they go back through the whole system and reset everything. I had my wallet stolen earlier this year, locked my credit bureau accounts to protect from fraud, and then had to unlock them a few months later to apply for credit for a new hot water heater. In an emergency situation on the water heater, not remembering little details such as how those security measures were set up and addresses on accounts and stuff like that. Mailing account on or mailing address on the account is a really common security question when the credit bureau is trying to make sure that you are really you on the telephone. Twice in the last year, I have encountered law enforcement officers. Well, one was they were securing, I guess they were both securing an area. One was when there was a tornado in Douglas County where I live, and I needed to get in to do rescue assistance with a friend's livestock. I was stopped. I had to know exactly what address I was going to. I don't want to be in a situation where a tornado hits my folks' house and I can't get in because I can't, in that moment, remember what their correct address is. Another situation, high profile, neighbor died, there was a funeral. I did not know that they were locking down the neighborhood while the family was at the funeral. I got pulled over for police for leaving my own home because that was considered a suspicious activity at that moment in time. I had to be able to say exactly where I had come from, exactly where I was going, in order to not be further detained by police. I hope it is many, many years from now, but sooner or later, the heirs of the landowners, and I'm one of those, will need to deal with their loved ones' estates. 10 or 20 years from now, going through old paperwork, trying to reconcile changed street numbers on legal documents, deeds, titles, all of that will be an unnecessary burden in a time of grief and challenges. About 5 years ago, I watched a friend go through that when her dad died. And some of figuring out inconsistencies on paperwork made it take years longer than it would have taken to unravel all of that. Now, some real life experiences with address changes and mail receipt. One of my recent street addresses, 501 North Street. I've received mail address to someone that is not me with an address of 501 North, some other street name, North Dakota or something. I don't remember what it was. close count, it was even a different zip code. Keeping those address numbers as close as possible will help get more mail to people than changing the numbers, because the numbers are what people look for when they're looking for an address in the mail system. It's easier to imagine someone looking at 5514 Anderson Avenue on a piece of mail 6.5 months after the forwarding order, because that's all the longer they last, and saying, oh, they must mean 5514 Anderson Lane. But looking at 2343 Anderson Lane, if that number is wrong, you know, they're not going to have any idea what it is. When I bought my farm at 1480 North 1700 Road in Douglas County, the address would change, had been changed from 501.5 North Street to the grid compliant 1480 North 1700 Road, years before I bought the property. But even years after my arrival at that address, I continued to receive mail in which the post office had crossed off 1480 North 17 Road and written in 509.5 North Street to ensure it was delivered properly. If the regular mail sorter or carrier were gone, mail would be returned to sender, address unknown, because it had gone out on the wrong route. Sometimes this prompted an irate phone call from a sender, such as the student loan company, asking, how dare I move and not notify them? Sometimes mail got to me days or weeks late because it went out on the wrong route, came back to the post office, and then was redirected. I ended up filing a new change of address form every 6 months for many years, had innumerable conversations with the postmaster, and eventually just gave up and started paying for a post office box so that I could get my mail. UPS facility in Lawrence could see the back of my house and still not find me to deliver packages to the new grid-based address. And I'm going to end by picking on Google. Despite attempted to update their system, Google still sends visitors to the other side of town on the other side of the river when 1480 North 1700 Road is input, unless the correct zip code is also in. This is in an area where roads really do run north and south, east and west in square grids, unlike this neighborhood. If Google can't utilize grid-based addresses accurately on a road system that aligns with the grid, what confidence can my parents and their neighbors have that the new grid-based numbers on Anderson Lane, which runs diagonally, will allow correct Google location? Anderson Lane residents have always received excellent service from emergency responders and have taken steps to ensure easy location of their homes. The only real problem the renumbering proposal addresses is that our lived reality doesn't fit into the administrative grid because of policy changes over time. The timing of the proposed street number changes now is arbitrary and capricious in these uncertain times. There are much more important matters that we should be attending to for public health and safety and personal health and safety than trying to untangle all of the administrative stuff that's going to come from changing the numbering system so completely. These changes could have been made years ago when the grid system was put in place, when it would have been easier and we all would have been younger. Or what we're asking is, can they be made in the future if the road is made public? If the county decides that it wants to build 2 or 3 bridges in order to develop the north end, if all of us pass away. Making this one small road compliant today will not make the county address system perfect as a whole. There will always be anomalies. We're asking you to kick the can down the road a while on this and not do it in the middle of a pandemic. Old addresses die hard. They are embedded in human paper and electronic systems in ways that can never be reliably reached by a 6-month postal forwarding order. please allow the current residents on Anderson Lane to retain their historical street numbers until there's a real reason to change such as new development.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Now, it is a private road, right?
It's a private road. The owners collaborate to pay for all the maintenance. If the culvert washes out on one of those crossings, we foot the bill instead of asking the county. And we're asking, well, in order for any additional addresses to be put on that road would have to be made a public road. And that would require building some bridges, and it would be a big expense to the county. And as long as we're paying for all of that maintenance and taking that burden on ourselves instead of having the county do the big maintenance, I think it's not too much to ask that we not have our lives disrupted right now by this address change. The addresses can be changed later. We can have a memorandum of understanding. Things can be filed with the Register of Deed for each property, say stating that if it's subdivided or if these changes happen, then that would trigger this coming before your body again. So there are ways of putting that formally in place. And I believe all the landowners are willing to do that.
Thank you. Monty, did you have something else?
Yes, in the interest of trying to come to a resolution on this matter, let me make a suggestion. While we would strongly recommend that we change the numbering system because, as Sherry said, we can't have two east-west roads that intersect. I mean, we're not going to be complying with the next gen 911 guidelines. That's our concern here. And the expectations of new emergency responders, dispatchers and everything, having certain expectations of finding people. So that's the ideal. If you are inclined to leave the numbers as they are, then I don't think we should worry about any agreements or any MOUs or anything like that are basically unenforceable, and we don't want to have to administer and worry about all of these different agreements all over the place. I mean, that's just impractical management anyway. Instead, we always have the right at some future point, if there's development or if there are continuing issues of not being able to find people, we can always readdress, come back and change it.
Okay.
To make it work for everybody.
Right.
So, does that make sense?
Okay, I'm gonna close the hearing.
Okay.
I'm gonna close the public hearing, so.
Not everyone has had a chance.
Well, everyone's gonna say the same thing, basically.
Well, I live the farthest out.
Pardon? You were what?
I've lived there 30 years.
Okay, well, can you come up here? I mean, it's, because we're saying the same thing. Everyone wants to not change, okay? And that's what I'm saying, time-wise and.
And yes, that's true, but I have a strong interest in this. We've lived there 30 years. We maintain the majority of the road, and the majority of the road is east-west. Anyway, I would like to keep them the same for the reasons that Mark and Natalia said.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then the hearing's closed. So I'm asking John for you to, now Monty made a suggestion, so, and I know that the other individuals have some problem with not following the grid.
Just a quick comment. I mean, I definitely agree with what the landowners are wanting to do with the signage and everything. We would certainly support that.
Okay.
I just don't think we need an agreement. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
And we will do a better job keeping up the signs you make us put up than make.
Well,
us change.
but if we don't have agreement, I would say go ahead and do the signs.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay.
Private road for residents. I know it's somewhat of an exception. I'm inclined to say let them put up the sign, and if we first sign of issue, that changes the dynamic immediately, and you need to be aware of that in advance. Because I know that there's an optimal for a couple other strategic planning things, but we have an issue trying to find somebody out there, trying to get services out there. That's where it ends. 100%.
Do you make a motion then?
And don't think we do we, for that?
You
We're
don't?
not making any changes. It's just
Okay,
thing
not
I'm
making
saying.
any changes, okay. Okay. So we'll go from there. So thank you guys for coming in.
Monty has something.
Yeah, we have a resolution to change, we're naming this private drive
Okay.
Anderson Lane, so we need a motion on that.
Okay.
Well, if you're gonna do that, yeah, you do.
Yeah, we're gonna do that, and we're going to, just will include, that we're gonna leave the numbering system the way it is.
Okay.
But we have a resolution, it has to be signed and filed, so we can do that.
So we're changing it to Anderson Lane, so we're naming the public road, but we're gonna leave the numbers in place.
We're gonna need a new resolution, because this resolution has a change in the addresses and
Right.
names. So.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll just.
We'll bring it back for
So
the
do
next
not make
business.
a motion
We'll bring it
to
back
pass
to the
this
next
resolution.
business meeting.
Yeah, do not make a motion to pass this
Okay.
resolution.
No, but approve it, naming it to Anderson Lane with leaving the numbers, and we'll bring back a resolution to sign at the next business meeting. Does that work?
Clancy?
Lonnie, my question would be, does the resolution need to have something that states we're not changing the addresses to follow the grid to cover us?
And that's my point of not passing a resolution now. We don't
Because the
even have
next
a wording
person,
worked
the
out.
next private road.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
agree.
go
So
through
don't
this
pass a
again.
resolution right now. When we're ready to, with the correct resolution, we'll have it passed.
I'm not talking about passing a resolution, I'm just
Well-
making a motion that the resolution will, what you want us to do.
Well, right now, I think that we will just leave it alone and
Okay.
when we get the new resolution done, then we can pass it.
Can we just put that on the business meeting and
Yeah,
not
yeah,
have
put it on the
another
business meeting,
public
yeah.
Yes.
hearing for that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's the concern.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So the county will put the sign, Anderson Lane.
No, you put the sign up.
Good,
You
good
put the
sign.
sign up.
Okay.
So there
If you're getting it from Bart, I know you are.
The county will put the Anderson Lane.
That's what
Or the county will
But
put the
then you're
Anderson.
responsible for the number.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you all.
You ladies did well. Anything else, John?
No, I don't have anything at this time. Do you?
I do not have anything.
Thank you.
Yes.
Rich, anything else?
No, it's
Okay.
additional business, gentlemen.
Okay.
Clancy, anything else?
Yeah.
That's a long way to come to say no.
We could have screamed at us. We're used to it.
Okay,
Okay. Well, with that being said, then I'm going to make a motion. We adjourn.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
You didn't say nothing. You're in favor of closing it.